Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales. Chapter 26:15, Tier 4 Secret Silver Guard, Life Transition. When Feng summoned Versailles into the reception room, the room's mana transformed. So dense. So heavy. The mana inside the reception room didn't feel like mana at all. Everyone in the room felt as if they had been submerged in water and were drowning. A Tier 4 personal guard? How is this possible? Long Wuxiang and the Tier 3 assassin were stunned when they saw Versailles. They had seen level 120 personal guards before. After all, every superpower in the game had a few by now, but those had only been Tier 3 personal guards. They had never seen a level 120, Tier 4 personal guard before. They hadn't even thought one existed at this stage of the game. Reaching Tier 4 was an immensely difficult feat, even for personal guards. Most player and power-owned guards couldn't even reach Tier 4. Fine Gold guards had a relatively high chance of completing their Tier 4 promotion quests, but reaching that milestone required a lot of preparation and a lot of time. Even the various superpowers personal guards had just recently reached level 120. Thus, logically, getting one's hands on a Tier 4 personal guard at this stage should be impossible, yet Zero Wing had one. Tier 4 NPCs were the true big shots of God's domain. They qualified to rule major NPC cities and were beyond current players' reach. A Tier 4 personal guard? It seems the Eastern continent's superpowers have grossly underestimated Zero Wing. Their assumption that your guild is powerless outside of Cold Spring Forest is severely flawed, Tori commented as he gazed at Versailles. Even after seeing the Tier 4 personal guard, he still appeared quite calm. Even so, I do not think that a level 120, Tier 4 Secret Silver Guard can break into our two-guild city. Although the guild city in question was only basic rank, it was protected by an incredibly powerful defensive magic array. The magic array could endure Tier 4 attacks without any trouble. Otherwise, the city wouldn't have withstood the demonic creature army's invasion. The Western continent was far more dangerous than the East. Towns and cities faced frequent demonic creature assaults. These armies especially loved to target guild towns and cities. It wasn't odd to find 3 to 5 mythic monsters among each demonic creature army, in addition to hundreds of thousands of weaker demonic creatures. Trying to rely on a measly Tier 4 NPC to threaten a guild city jointly operated by 2 super guilds was laughable. Of course, a Tier 4 NPC, particularly a Tier 4 Great Wizard, could destroy an ordinary guild city, but trying to destroy a superpower's guild city with a single Tier 4 NPC was ridiculous. Every guild city a superpower established would have some means of fending off or exterminating Tier 4 beings. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any difference between superpowers and ordinary powers. That's right. A Tier 4 Secret Silver Guard would be invincible in the fields. Unfortunately, it is not enough to threaten a superpower's guild city, Crimson Star said after snapping out of her daze. From near the reception room's doors, Long Wuxiang nodded in agreement. The strength Zero Wing had just revealed was astonishing. If Zero Wing were dealing with a weaker superpower, that power might concede to Zero Wing's demands. Unfortunately, Zero Wing was dealing with Violet Sword, a veteran super guild that was almost as powerful as the 5 great super guilds. Not even 2 or 3 Tier 4 Secret Silver Guards would be enough to change Violet Sword's mind. Indeed, a Tier 4 Secret Silver Guard would take forever just to blast open a guild city's defensive magic array, Feng agreed. Smiling, he asked, but what if I have a Tier 4 Fine Gold ranked Great Wizard? Impossible. Just having one Tier 4 personal guard is a miracle. How could you have another one? Crimson Star instinctively opposed Feng's calm question. A Tier 4 Secret Silver Guard wasn't strong enough to break a guild city's defensive magic array, but it would be a different story for a Tier 4 Fine Gold Guard. Generally, Fine Gold Guards possessed taboo skills and curses that allowed them to exhibit power beyond their tier. With the power of a Tier 4 taboo skill or curse, even shattering a city's defensive barrier with a single hit would be possible. However, rising from Tier 3 to Tier 4 was a major feat for personal guards. Even personal guards with extremely high growth potential would need to prepare extensively before challenging their Tier 4 promotion quest. Moreover, they still had a high chance of failing, and sending a large number of personal guards to challenge their Tier 4 promotion quest with the hope that some would succeed wasn't feasible for current guilds. When a Tier 3 personal guard wished to challenge their Tier 4 promotion quest, they needed a large number of magic cores, and not just any would do. These magic cores had to come from level 100 plus mythic monsters. Unfortunately, level 100 plus mythic monsters didn't even have a 5% drop rate for magic cores, and only demonic creatures would drop them at all. As a result, even the various super guilds could, at most, afford to send one personal guard to challenge their Tier 4 promotion quest. Even if Zero-Wing hunted monsters with a Tier 3 night division, there were only so many mythic-ranked demonic creatures in Cold Spring Forest. The fact that Zero-Wing had nurtured a single Tier 4 personal guard was a miracle, but having two was simply impossible. I might have only one Tier 4 personal guard, but that doesn't mean that I can't increase his growth potential, Feng said before revealing a translucent, multicolored fruit. Everyone in the reception room felt physically and mentally restless the moment Feng retrieved the colorful fruit from his bag. Their instincts screamed at them to devour the fruit. The fruit of life? Who are you? Crimson Star demanded, staring at the colorful fruit in shock. Feng's Tier 4 personal guard had been surprising enough, yet this man also had the incomparably precious fruit of life. This was unbelievable. The fruit of life was legendary throughout God's domain. People had even called it the holy fruit. Not only could the fruit of life resurrect the dead, but it could also help living creatures recover to their peak and elevate their potential. There were even rumors that players could boost their life rating significantly by consuming it. If they spotted a fruit of life, even high-tiered NPCs would do everything in their power to claim it, not to mention players. In Crimson Star's opinion, though, this legendary fruit was just that, a legend. It was beyond the reach of players. The only known way to obtain the fruit of life was to harvest it from the elven race's tree of life. However, elves consider these fruits holy. They would never trade or sell the fruit to outsiders. If players wanted their own fruit of life, they could only obtain one by attacking a location that housed a tree of life. However, the elves' trees of life were so heavily guarded that not even Tier 6 gods could reach them. Moreover, most of the various kingdoms and empires' great and grand wizards had learned from elven great and grand wizards. Anyone that dared attack the elves' main headquarters would only make an enemy of these kingdoms and empires. No one under the heavens would be able to save them. Even Tori stared at the fruit in Feng's hand in astonishment. The fruit of life. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The various superpowers had been desperately searching for the item after learning about it. Based on what they had learned, there was only one way, other than raiding an elven city, to procure a fruit of life. While the elves refused to trade or sell these fruits, they sometimes offered them as gifts to players who had significantly helped their race. Hence, there were quite a few fruits lying around. Only, most of these fruits of life had been given away decades, maybe centuries, ago, so no one knew their current whereabouts. Even with the superpowers' powerful information networks, no one had found the slightest clue leading to these gifted fruits of life, and yet, Feng held one in his palm. "Eat it," Feng said, passing the colorful fruit to Versailles. Versailles did not hesitate, excitedly and fanatically taking the fruit. His changed attitude made the room's mana restless. After a deep, sincere bow of gratitude to Feng, Versailles ate the fruit of life as the players in the reception room watched. Chapter 26:16, Potential Skyrockets, World Creation. Crimson Star's and Wildfighter's eyes went wide as they watched Feng give the fruit of life to his personal guard with no hesitation. What a waste! The Fruit of Life was an incredibly rare and valuable item, far more valuable than a Tier 4 fine gold guard. That fruit could permanently increase a player's life rating or upgrade a fine gold guard to dark gold rank, drastically increasing the personal guard's chance of reaching Tier 5. Versailles was only a Tier 4 secret silver guard. Even if the Fruit of Life upgraded him to fine gold rank, and his combat power drastically increased, he wouldn't become much more valuable. Fine gold guards had almost no chance of reaching Tier 5. Meanwhile, players could challenge their Tier 4 promotion quest once they reached level 120, which would significantly decrease a Tier 4 personal guard's value. Using the Fruit of Life to help a player or personal guard reach Tier 5 would be far more beneficial than using it to boost a Tier 4 NPC's combat power. Not many in God's domain would reach Tier 5. That much was clear after seeing how few players completed their Tier 3 promotion quests. While Crimson Star and Wildfighter mourned the fact that Feng had wasted the fruit, a visible layer of life energy formed around Versailles. Initially, the Tier 4 Great Wizard had been old and decrepit. His aura had been frightening, but it hadn't been able to hide his fading life aura. Now, however, Versailles regained his youthful vigor at a visible rate. Not only was his life aura growing stronger, but he also began to appear younger. After 5 seconds, Versailles had gone from looking like someone in his 70s to someone in his 50s. As soon as the process ended, the mana density in the room skyrocketed. Space started to isolate the room from the outside world, with Versailles as its commander. World creation. How is this possible? Crimson Star's jaw dropped. Instructor Tori could only stare at the Tier 4 personal guard, dumbfounded. Once God's domain's NPCs reached Tier 4, they almost always gained a personal domain. These domains were the reason that Tier 4 NPCs were so powerful. The domains NPCs gained weren't a result of a skill or spell, but naturally formed. They also weren't limited like domain skills. Not only could Tier 4 NPCs easily suppress their enemies with their natural domains, but they could also elevate their own combat power. These domains were also the reason that Tier 4 NPCs could effortlessly take on a large group of Tier 3 NPCs of the same level. If players tried to challenge a Tier 4 NPC without a Tier 4 combatant, it wouldn't matter how many Tier 3 players they had, they'd all die. This was also why Tier 4 NPCs qualified to serve as magistrates in major NPC cities, while Tier 3 NPCs did not. If players tried to attack a major NPC city without strong enough fighters, they'd accomplish nothing, regardless of how many combatants they had. NPCs weren't like monsters. Tier 4 monsters were only powerful due to their basic attributes, while players relied on skills, spells, and numbers to make up the attribute differences. Even Tier 2 players could defeat Tier 4 monsters with a large enough team. NPCs, however, had an overwhelming advantage with their mana control. A Tier 4 NPC could use their mana to suppress every enemy within range. If players couldn't break free from the mana's bindings, they wouldn't even be able to put up a fight. However, Versailles had gone past obtaining a natural domain, now able to use world creation. Versailles had mastered his mana control before, but now, he ruled over it. With his will alone, he could manipulate mana, bending it to his rules as if creating a new world around himself. Normally, however, only Tier 5 NPCs could command world creation. Even Feng was astonished. He had never realized how amazing Versailles was. While the Fruit of Life could increase an NPC's growth potential, it wouldn't immediately alter the NPC's basic attributes or combat standards unless the NPC had some lingering injuries that weakened them. Any Tier 4 NPC with world creation was a true big shot, only one step away from reaching Tier 5. They were far stronger than ordinary Tier 4 NPCs. The difference between a Tier 4 NPC with world creation and one without was like the difference between a Tier 3 player with a fully unlocked mana body and a player that had yet to accomplish the feat. There was at least half a tier between the two. Elated, Feng immediately inspected Versailles' statistics. Versailles, Feng's personal guard, gender, male age, 76 loyalty, 93 growth potential, 90 level 120 class, Tier 4 Great Wizard crap. His growth potential is just 1 point away from the Dark Gold rank? When Feng saw Versailles' growth potential, realization dawned on him. Now, Feng was absolutely certain that Versailles' original growth potential hadn't been Secret Silver rank, but Fine Gold rank. Moreover, he should have been a Tier 4 big shot on the cusp of reaching Tier 5. The Fruit of Life simply wasn't capable of providing such a huge growth potential increase. They were talking about a whopping 16 points. Even the Fruit of Life, known as the Holy Fruit, couldn't boost an NPC's growth potential so massively. The only explanation was that Versailles hadn't fully recovered after drinking the Water of Life and had failed to recover to his full growth potential. Feng didn't know what had left Versailles in such a state, but he was overjoyed and ecstatic. He was even happier than when he had obtained a fragmented legendary item. He had already known that Versailles was an amazing Tier 4 NPC, but now, he learned that this personal guard even had world creation. With this, he could accomplish more than ever, including visiting many of the locations he couldn't reach during his previous life. After players reached Tier 3 and fully unlocked their mana bodies, no land in God's domain was beyond their reach. While they could even visit the most dangerous maps, however, returning would be another matter altogether. After all, level 100+ maps made up the majority of the vast continent of God's domain. The human kingdoms and empires only occupied land suitable for their residence, which only included a small fraction of the main continent. There were far more maps that were too dangerous for humans. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Tier 3 players were still limited to relatively safe locations. They'd only be attempting suicide if they tried to explore the truly dangerous areas on the continent. They might even have an encounter that would force them to restart their account. Now that Feng had a Tier 4 world creation NPC by his side, however, he could visit the game's truly lethal maps. These dangerous locations generally served as the venues for Tier 4 promotion quests and contained many ancient inheritances. When the various superpowers experts had reached Tier 4 and beyond in the past, they had spent much of their time in these areas, rarely returning. They could only continue to grow stronger by exploring these maps. Realizing how much time he had spent gazing at his personal guard stats, Feng quickly suppressed his excitement and returned his attention to Tori and his two companions. "May I know if Zero Wing now qualifies to negotiate a partnership with your guild?" Feng asked Tori. Chapter 26:17, Secret of the Ancient Secret Land. Even after a long moment, Tori and his comrades couldn't find a proper response to Feng's question. Feng was simply too ruthless. To ensure that he'd be able to enter the ancient secret land, Feng had wasted a Fruit of Life to upgrade his personal guard to Fine Gold rank. Not even they would dare behave so lavishly. However, they had to admit that this swordsman was extremely fortunate to upgrade his personal guard to a Tier 4 world creation NPC. With this single NPC, Feng could blast through a basic city's defensive magic array. Versailles could cause a huge scene inside the city, allowing Feng and his team to pass into the ancient secret land unhindered. Instructor Tori, Black Flame must be dreaming. Wildfighter said in the team chat. Even if he can break into the city and enter the ancient secret land, he'll only be able to do so a handful of times, at most. I refuse to believe he can come and go from our city as he pleases forever. Moreover, mythology will have to bear half of the entry slots we lose because of Zero Wing, significantly reducing our losses. When our two guilds gain Tier 4 experts, his personal guard will be useless, and our guild will still have 200 entry slots. The ancient secret land contained an ancient city independent from God's domain's two main continents. Even if players defeated the trial boss and became citizens, they would need to remain within the city for some time to enjoy its benefits. Players wouldn't gain access to all of the city's benefits when they first reached the city. However, while Zero Wing could get into the ancient secret land, the amount of time its players could stay in the city would be limited. Players could only extend their stay with a special tool. 1 week. Even with this special tool, players could only reside in the ancient secret land for a maximum of 7 natural days. If they did not leave on time, they'd starve to death. The special tool in question also had a 10-day cooldown. In other words, Feng would have to break into Violet Sword and Mythology's Guild City repeatedly to continue enjoying the secret land's benefits. Not only were the various superpowers searching for an easier way to unlock their experts' mana bodies, however, but they were also preparing for the Tier 4 promotion quests. This meant that Zero Wing had very little time left to take advantage of the secret land. Crimson Star nodded in agreement with Wildfighter's claim. There was no way their two guilds could form an alliance. After all, Zero Wing couldn't offer enough benefits to warrant 100 entry slots. Tori didn't immediately reply to Wildfighter's proposal. Instead, he closed his eyes and fell deep into thought. After some time, the man's eyes opened, and he looked at Feng, saying, "Guild leader Black Flame, a partnership between our guilds isn't exactly out of the question." Instructor Tori? Both Wildfighter and Crimson Star were surprised to hear Tori's response. Violet Sword didn't need to agree to Feng's demands, and their guild leader and grand elders would never agree to such laughable conditions. "What are your conditions?" Feng calmly asked. Feng admitted that he had demanded quite a bit, but he had no choice. This was all for the sake of helping Zero Wing's members reach Tier 4. With the guild's current resources, he could only guarantee that a few select individuals would complete their promotion quests. Everyone else's chances were minute, at best. If Zero Wing couldn't nurture enough Tier 4 experts, it would struggle to defend its current resources and territory. Too many superpowers targeted his guild, and they were only powerless against Zero Wing now due to the Night Division and its guild city's formidable defenses. However, once the era of Tier 4 dawned, destroying guild cities wouldn't just become possible, it had become common. When God's domain had reached the Tier 4 era in the past, it had been the craziest chapter of the game's history. The various superpowers had fought like madmen, destroying countless guild cities. Many had even been annihilated. This was also one of the reasons that Feng was so desperate to reach Tier 4. Although he could rely on Versailles to force his way into the ancient secret land, that wasn't a long-term plan. Allying with Violet Sword was his best option. He'd only resort to force if the Super Guild refused to work with him. "I only require that you assist us with one thing," Guild leader Black Flame, Tori said. "So long as you complete this task, we will agree to all of your conditions." "What is it?" Tori's statement piqued Feng's curiosity. He hadn't expected this man to agree to his conditions so easily. "It's quite simple. I just need you to clear the ancient secret land's hero trial," Tori declared. "Once you clear it, we'll agree to your demands, but if you fail, we'll ask you to leave. When the time comes, our guilds will rely on their own strength to enter the ancient secret land." The hero trial? Feng was a little confused. As far as he could remember, the ancient secret land's trial only had 2 difficulties, and neither was called hero. The hero trial. "Instructor Tori, that's too risky. We only have one opportunity. We will not get another chance if we fail. How can Zero Wing's people possibly complete it?" Wildfighter anxiously complained. The ancient secret land's trial only had 2 difficulties on the surface, normal and elite. However, as a bonus for activating the ancient secret land, they had the opportunity to face an even harder trial, the hero trial. As long as players cleared the normal trial, they'd become official citizens in the ancient city, enjoying the various benefits the city had to offer. However, based on Violet Sword's research, clearing the hero trial would instantly grant the players noble status. There was a huge difference between the benefits a noble had access to and those of an ordinary citizen. While players could improve their rank, rising to noble status would require a ridiculous amount of time and effort. Unfortunately, Violet Sword only had one chance to attempt the hero trial. They had originally intended to wait until the hero trial's time limit was up, which was in roughly 30 days. That way, they'd have the best possible chance of clearing the trial. However, not only had Tori just suggested they face the hero trial sooner than planned, but he also requested Zero Wings members clear it. While Zero Wings members had fully unlocked their mana bodies, their combat standards were far from satisfactory. Asking Zero Wings members to clear the hero trial would be a huge waste. If you fail the hero trial, I'd like Zero Wing to refrain from targeting the ancient secret land for 10 days. Are you willing to accept this challenge, Guild Leader Black Flame? Tori asked Xiaofan. As Tori finished his question, realization dawned on Wildfighter and Crimson Star. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. While using the hero trial to gain a 10-day buffer was somewhat extravagant, it would give Violet Sword more than enough time to prepare for the normal trial. Once Violet Sword completed the trial, and its members became ordinary citizens in the ancient city, Zero Wing wouldn't be able to affect the guild's development overmuch, even if they made it into the ancient secret land. In fact, Zero Wing might not be allowed in the city as a result. Of course, Feng had to agree to the challenge first. Guild Leader Black Flame, do you dare to accept this challenge? Violet Sword has spent an enormous amount of resources to secure this ancient secret land. We can't simply hand over half of our available slots for nothing. You, at least, need to prove that Zero Wing can earn these slots, Crimson Star prodded, faintly smiling at Feng. Deal. I agree to your conditions, Feng replied after giving the matter some thought. However, I have an additional requirement. If you can agree to it, we will sign the contract immediately. Otherwise, as Instructor Tori has said, we will have to rely on our own strength to get into the secret land. What's this requirement? Wildfighter asked, curious. Chapter 26:18, Ancient Legacy. Earlier, I stated that I want the first pick of the trial boss's loot. That condition still stands, but I'm sure you're aware of how difficult the hero trial is. 100 Zero Wing members won't be enough to clear it, Feng calmly stated. Hence, I need your full cooperation. I repeat, your full cooperation. I will choose the 200 raid team members from among my people. Of course, you can send a few dozen players, as well. Once we clear the trial, we'll each take half of the given entry slots. I'm sure that's a fitting trade-off, don't you think? By the time Feng finished speaking, Wildfighter and Crimson Star were stunned. Neither of them had expected Feng to make such an outrageous demand. They had thought this swordsman would propose a more excessive condition, such as requiring Violet Sword's members to serve as cannon fodder. They had mentally prepared to watch their members die several times. However, they had never dreamed that Feng wouldn't demand an even higher price, but offer to include more of his guild members in the raid. Even Aqua Rose, Long Wuxiang, and the others near the reception room's door were flabbergasted. Feng's last condition meant Zero Wing would do all the work for Violet Sword. It was insane. That won't be a problem. As long as you clear the hero trial, select any raid members you want. In fact, we won't even impose a penalty if our guild members die in the raid, Tori said. Although he was similarly surprised by Feng's proposal, he nodded in agreement. However, our people will ignore your orders if they think the raid is impossible, and you ask them to throw their lives away. Violet Sword had already prepared for multiple team wipes if it meant clearing the hero trial. Since Feng's condition would reduce the number of casualties their guild suffered, Tori was more than willing to agree. If that's the case, I agree, Feng said, nodding. Give me 3 days. I'll lead my men to the ancient secret land in 3 days. Meanwhile, Silent Wonder will remain here to help you. 3 days should be enough time for you to prepare the necessary tools. 3 days? Wildfighter frowned slightly. He hadn't thought Feng would want to act so soon. He had assumed they'd have around 5 days to prepare. Including the agreed-upon 10-day buffer, Violet Sword might have been able to gather enough experts to complete the elite trial. That won't be a problem. You may enter Violet Light City in 3 days. We will be waiting for you there, Tori said. Following which, Feng and Tori signed a contract. If Zero Wing cleared the hero trial, Violet Sword would surrender 100 entry slots to the ancient secret land. If Zero Wing failed, the guild would be prohibited from setting foot in the secret land for 10 days. With the contract signed, Feng promptly left Holy Flame City. Guild leader, 3 days isn't enough time. We can't even transfer 100 players to the western continent within 3 days, and why did you offer to bring even more of our people into this raid? Aqua Rose asked from behind Feng on the Thunder Eagle. Exploring secret lands always had a high casualty rate. While a team could reap plenty of benefits, Zero Wing would only receive a fraction of what this secret land had to offer. Violet Sword would gain the most benefit. Zero Wing didn't need to sacrifice so many members just to help this super guild gain access. Long Wuxiang found Feng's decision a bit odd, as well, but since he wasn't a member of Zero Wing, he was in no position to question the swordsman. If this were an ordinary secret land, I wouldn't have offered to contribute so much manpower, but we're talking about a secret land that has survived since ancient times. Moreover, we're going to challenge this land's trial, Feng said, smiling. What do you think a trial is? Isn't it a test of strength that grants bountiful rewards when cleared? Aqua Rose replied, confused by her guild leader's question. That much was common knowledge in God's domain. You're only half correct, Feng said, shaking his head. Half? Aqua Rose's confusion grew. What do you mean? A trail is also an excellent training opportunity, Feng explained. It is true that God's domain's trails test players' strength, but a larger part of the reason for their existence is to help players grow even stronger. This is especially true with the trials from ancient times. The rewards are only a bonus for clearing these ancient trials. The trial itself is far more valuable. These trials contain complete legacies from ancient times. Even breaking past the mana body's 100% limit could be possible if we can comprehend a fraction of these legacies. Why else would there only be one opportunity to challenge the ancient secret land's hero trial? Before players had reached Tier 4 and began to explore the game's truly dangerous locations in the past, everyone had regarded trials like dungeons, nothing more. However, once players had reached Tier 4 and begun exploring these areas, they had found one ancient trial after another. As these Tier 4 experts continued to clear the ancient trials, they continued to grow stronger. Everyone realized how important God's domain's trials were after this discovery, especially those that had survived intact since ancient times. Every ancient trial was a golden opportunity. Since Violet Sword had offered to abandon the chance to challenge the ancient secret land's hero trial, Feng had to take advantage of this opportunity. He had even almost failed to contain his excitement and expose the hero trial's secrets when Tori had stated the condition. If possible, Feng wanted to monopolize all 200 raid slots, but Violet Sword would need a representative to claim the ancient city's entry slots, so it would have to send a few players, regardless of its desires. Guild leader, are you saying that we can use this trial to unlock more of our members' mana bodies? Excitement flashed in Aqua Rose's eyes. If this were true, they had just hit the jackpot. She had experienced ancient times training systems personally. The best example was the extraordinary tower. Her training was many times more efficient in that tower than anywhere else she had been in God's domain. It was also thanks to the extraordinary tower that she could fight domain realm experts, despite only having reached the Void Realm. If she and Zero Wing's other members could improve their combat standards and mana control, they'd have a much easier time with their Tier 4 promotion quests. Why would it be that easy? We only have one opportunity to face the trial. Whether you gain anything from it will depend on you, Feng replied, rolling his eyes. Not even 1 in 10,000 Tier 3 experts would cross the mana body's 100% threshold. How could all of Zero Wing's members make a breakthrough after facing a single trial? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. This was just like with the Extraordinary Tower. Despite the tower's exceptional training mechanisms regarding the realms of truth, many Zero Wing core members had yet to reach the truth realm. Even so, this is an excellent opportunity. At least we have a chance to grow stronger. Some among us might even make a breakthrough like Violet, if we're lucky, Aqua Rose said, smiling. Long Wuxiang, who sat nearby, was tempted as he eavesdropped on the conversation. He had never realized that ancient trials offered such a benefit either. He had seen the strength one gained when they unlocked more than 100% of their mana body. Violet Cloud hadn't even reached the domain realm, yet she had defeated Sinful Flame. In the end, Long Wuxiang couldn't contain himself and asked Feng, Guild Leader Black Flame, may I know if you'd be willing to sell some of the entry slots to Azure? Of course, we will pay a sufficient price. You may state any demands you wish. Chapter 26:19, Unfathomable. Zero Wing. Long Wuxiang's request surprised Aqua Rose and the others a little. They had never expected the man to suggest a partnership with Zero Wing. Long Wuxiang was an extremely prideful man. Even after Zero Wing had put on an outstanding display of strength during Azure's family competition, his attitude toward them and their guild had only improved from indifferent to normal. Rather, he merely saw Zero Wing as an equal now. The Azure Chamber of Commerce rivaled super guilds, after all, and while it might not be a match for Zero Wing and Violet Sword's gift for nurturing talented players, the Chamber's influence, resources, and manpower were far beyond that of Zero Wing. Moreover, Azure's family competition this year had only involved the younger members from the 5 main shareholder families. Not all of Azure's young talents had participated. Most of the Chamber's younger experts weren't even from the 5 main shareholder families, and some of them were even stronger than Xiaoqian. However, they didn't have the necessary qualifications to participate in the family competitions. Since Azure is willing to cooperate, I don't mind selling a few slots, but how many do you want, Elder Long? Feng asked, not surprised in the least by Long Wuxiang's request. Aqua Rose and the others, on the other hand, didn't realize how important the younger generation was to the various superpowers. To the various superpowers, the younger members were their future. Take the Azure Chamber of Commerce, for example. A large part of the reason for the guild's current achievements was the value it placed on nurturing young talents. In contrast, some first-rate guilds never rose beyond that, despite their many decades of experience, because they didn't value their younger members. Unless first-rate guilds recruited an astonishing genius, they remained first-rate for the rest of their existences. Since Feng had exposed the fact that players could potentially grow stronger through the ancient Secret Lands hero trial, he had expected Long Wuxiang to instantly consider a partnership with Zero Wing, regardless of the man's pride. Long Wuxiang's instincts as one of Azure's Grand Elders was also why Feng had fearlessly informed Aqua Rose of the hero trial's peculiarities. If he hadn't wanted anything, he would have had the discussion away from Long Wuxiang. Allying with Azure was of the utmost importance since Zero Wing didn't have any power on the western continent, aside from the Starlight Fortress. If Zero Wing wanted to secure a stable foothold in the west, it needed to ally itself with the local superpowers. While Divine Tribe was a powerful ally, the guild's commercial abilities couldn't compare to Azure's. Divine Tribe couldn't offer Zero Wing any assistance with intercontinental travel either. Moreover, Zero Wing already had a dialogue with Azure due to Silent Wonder. Partnering with Azure would be a safer and more reliable option. Purchasing 30 or 40 slots would be fantastic, but if that's not possible, we'll be happy with 10, as well. Guild leader Black Flame, Long Wuxiang hesitantly ventured after giving the matter some thought. The Azure Chamber of Commerce was a massive organization. The guild needed to nurture all of its young talents, including those from the shareholder families and those who weren't. With enough slots, he could help the rest of the guild's younger experts. Of course, if Feng refused, he at least had to purchase enough for the 5 main shareholder families. 40. After giving the matter some thought, Feng said, "That's fine, but you will have to agree to 3 conditions." "That's fine." Long Wuxiang's eyes lit up. Eagerly, he continued, "Please, state your conditions, guild leader Black Flame. We'll even agree to 4 or 5 demands. 40 entry slots would be more than enough for the 5 main families' young talents, but he'd also be able to include the outside experts. If this negotiation succeeded, the guild's neutral elders and grand elders would definitely side with the Long family. First, I want Azure's help with a matter. I need to transport some of Zero Wing's members to the Western continent in 3 days. We'll need 100 or so, Feng said. That won't be a problem. 3 days is more than enough time. When the time comes, just have them gather in the 10 Saints Empire, Long Wuxiang agreed without hesitation. Intercontinental travel might be difficult for other superpowers, but that was no problem for Azure. Not even transporting 200 players would be a problem. At most, they'd have to spend more magic crystals. For my second condition, I want a medium shipyard and a plot of golden land in the Silvermoon Empire's Ocean Tide City, Feng continued. Trade between the 2 main continents would rely on naval transportation in the future. Meanwhile, Ocean Tide City was the largest port city in the Silvermoon Empire. As long as Zero Wing had roots in this city, doing business between the 2 continents would be easy. This won't be a problem either. I'll notify my eldest brother later. You can start conducting business there as soon as the handover procedures are complete, Long Wuxiang said, not at all surprised by Feng's second condition. Zero Wing had barely any territory in the west. If it wished to acquire the western continent's resources, the quickest way would be establishing itself in the west's port cities. That way, it could travel between the continents more often and transport far more cargo. After all, players could only transport a limited amount of items via teleportation. With contact between the 2 continents still being so difficult, one could resell merchandise from either area for a high price. However, those prices would fall as more powers gained the ability to travel between the east and west. Zero Wing would need to increase its sales volume to maintain a sizable income. Thus, securing a port city in the west was a must for the guild. My third requirement is the most important. I need Azure's complete Void Realm legacy, Feng earnestly declared, glancing at Long Wuxiang. Zero Wing still didn't have a complete Void Realm legacy, and because of that, it wasn't as well equipped for nurturing talented players as the various superpowers. If Zero Wing could acquire a complete Void Realm legacy, the guild's strength would reach a whole new level, becoming a true superpower. That, Long Wuxiang hesitated. The complete Void Realm legacy is one of the guild's core secrets. We've spent decades refining it. I'm afraid I don't have the authority to agree to that condition. While the 40 entry slots were precious, this was only an opportunity. Trading the secrets the guild had relied on to survive for one chance was absurd. Not even the guild's other elders and grand elders would agree to such an unfair demand. I know it's excessive, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You won't get a second chance. Moreover, we're talking about a legacy that has survived since ancient times. I guarantee it will contain secrets regarding the Tier 4 promotion quests, Feng unhurriedly explained. If that reason isn't enough, I can offer an additional benefit. What benefit? Long Wuxiang asked curiously. Azure's complete Void Realm legacy was one of the guild's most precious secrets. Sharing this secret with another guild would be the equivalent of weakening its foundation. A minor benefit wasn't enough of an incentive. I can help 3 of Azure's experts surpass 100% of their mana body's potential. Of course, the 3 individuals will have to be exceptionally talented. Ordinary experts won't do. What do you think? Feng asked, smiling. You're saying you'll help them grow as powerful as Violet Cloud, transcending tiers? Feng's offer astonished Long Wuxiang, and for a moment, he doubted the swordsman's claim. Anyone that had watched Violet Cloud's match against Sinful Flame would likely never forget her strength. She was simply too formidable. Violet Cloud's strength was no longer just a result of combat techniques or standards. She had pure power. Even with the same basic attributes as Sinful Flame, she had emerged victorious. If she had even slightly higher basic attributes, her victory would have been even more outstanding. Yet, Feng now informed him that Zero Wing could nurture such monsters. That's right, Feng said, nodding. To prove it, I'll even help these 3 players unlock their mana body's full potential in a day. Are you willing to accept my offer, Elder Long? Wait a minute, please. I need a moment to process this. I'll have to discuss the offer with my guild's Grand Elders first, as well, Long Wuxiang said. He could have viewed Feng's offer as nonsense, but now, he couldn't afford to brush it read latest chapters at Wuxia World. If Azure could really have 3 young monsters like Violet Cloud, it wouldn't have to worry about its future. That won't be a problem, Feng said. Take your time, but I will need an answer within 2 days. Please, wait a moment, Guild Leader Black Flame. I will contact my 3rd brother now and push the Grand Elders to make a decision as soon as possible, Long Wuxiang said, nodding. He then contacted Long Xianglong and appraised him of the situation. When Long Xianglong heard about Feng's offer in Azure's residence, he, too, was astonished. What did you say? Zero Wing can help us nurture 3 monsters on par with Violet Cloud? How is that possible? Chapter 2620, Crazed Azure Chamber of Commerce's residence, meeting room. Normally, it was very difficult to find Azure's Grand Elders gathered in a single location, yet nearly every one of them had convened in the top-floor meeting room, and they all looked impatient. Xianglong, why did you call us here so urgently? You know how busy we are right now. All of the various superpowers are frantically searching for ways to unlock their experts' mana bodies. If we fall behind now, we'll suffer later, a woman in exquisite, white mage robes complained. That's right. If this isn't something important, you'll have to pay for our losses, a robust, middle-aged man with crimson eyes and covered in glowing runes agreed, nodding. Despite such rude questioning, Long Xianglong didn't explode in a fit of rage. He tolerated these 2 not only because they were Grand Elders in Azure, but because their strength was second only to Sinful Flame's, as well. They were even stronger than Long Xianglong, the Long family's most formidable expert. Along with Triumphant Howl, they were Azure's 3 monsters, and each represented Azure's non-family members. Why isn't Triumphant Howl here yet? Long Xianglong asked, glancing at the empty seat beside the 2. You know him. Unless the guild is going to war or is at risk of destruction, he doesn't care about anything besides leveling, the crimson-eyed man said. Forget about him. Why did you call for us here? Alright, then. With 80% of the guild's Grand Elders present, we should have enough people to make a decision, Long Xianglong said, sighing. While Azure's 3 monsters were incredibly powerful, they were also free spirits. They hated restrictions and rarely listened to the ruling family's representatives. What exactly has happened, lunatic Long? You actually used a Grand Elder mobilization order. Has something gone wrong with Violet Sword over Silent Wonder? Duan Hanshan demanded, smirking at Long Xianglong. Duan Hanshan had already learned about Feng taking Silent Wonder to Violet Sword's residence the moment Azure's family competition had ended in hopes of settling the dispute between the Long family and the Super Guild. However, he doubted the issue would be so easily resolved. The Zeus Corporation's reputation was at stake, and if the Long family refused to cooperate, it would set a bad example for the other powers under the corporation's command. Even if Silent Wonder were of little significance to the Zeus Corporation's plans, it wouldn't let the matter rest so easily. Meanwhile, Zero Wing didn't have enough power in the West to convince Violet Sword to budge. If the negotiation didn't go well, Violet Sword might even move against the Long family and Zero Wing directly. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, old ice demon. The matter regarding Wonder has already been dealt with, Long Xianglong shot back. As a matter of fact, I've gathered you all here today to discuss good news. This matter might even affect Azure's future. Something that can actually influence Azure's development. Long Wuxiang left with Zero Wing to visit Violet Sword. Have we secured a partnership with the Super Guild over the ancient secret land? The white-clad woman asked, a hint of anticipation flashing in her eyes. The only thing she could think of that might affect Azure's future was the ability to nurture experts. Based on the information Azure had obtained, Violet Sword had discovered an ancient secret land that included an ancient training ground. If Azure's young experts could use this training ground, they could grow significant. Happy face, you're half correct, Long Xiangong replied, chuckling. Half? Have we not negotiated an alliance with Violet Sword? Duan Hanshan asked, confused. Correct. We're cooperating with Zero Wing, Long Xianglong said, nodding. Black Flame is willing to sell us 40 entry slots into the ancient secret land, but in exchange, Black Flame wants our complete Void Realm legacy. Is Black Flame insane? You're talking about our guild's foundation, yet he wants it for 40 measly slots? Only a fool would agree to such a partnership. Have you really gone mad, lunatic Long? Duan Hanshan said, sneering. What a joke. Azure's Void Realm legacy was the fruit of several decades of hard labor. They'd be crazy to share it with Zero Wing for a few training slots. This data was enough to help an ordinary power become a superpower in just a few short years. In fact, a large part of the reason most guilds didn't become superpowers was that they lacked effective training methods. However, as long as a guild had enough time, money, and this data, it could easily grow into a superpower. This was why the various super first-rate and super guilds rarely sold their research into the realms of refinement. Xianglong, if you've called us here to tell us this, I think it's time the Long family found a new representative, the crimson-eyed man coldly criticized. Everyone in the room gave Long Xianglong frosty looks. The Azure Chamber of Commerce did not belong to one family. It was the result of the 5 main shareholder families and a large number of non-family Grand Elders' exhausting work. It was unacceptable for any one member to sell the guild's secrets. I know, Long Xianglong said, not surprised by everyone's attitude in the least. He simply smiled back at them and continued, what I'm going to say next is the important part. What could possibly be so important that you felt the need to waste our time? Don't tell me Zero Wing can nurture a group of monsters, the white-clad woman said disdainfully. You've hit the nail right on the head, Belle, Long Xianglong replied, nodding at the white-clad woman named Butterfly Belle. Black Flame has promised that he can help us nurture 3 monsters that can unlock more than 100% of their mana body's potential. He's even promised that he'll help the 3 selected players reach 100% within a day. Cross the 100% threshold? Isn't that what the little girl from Zero Wing accomplished? Duan Hanshan exclaimed. Everyone that had watched the family competition had learned of how frightening Violet Cloud's combat power was. Not even a legendary expert like Sinful Flame had been her match. She was inhuman. Most ordinary powers thought unlocking 100% of the mana body could be accomplished given time, but anyone that had tried knew that the closer they got to 100%, the better their mana body performed. Unlocking 100% of one's mana body should be the maximum. However, Violet Cloud, who had broken past 100%, was definitely an extremely talented genius, and anyone that tried to replicate the feat would only be met with failure. Yet, Zero Wing declared that it could nurture inhuman experts like Violet Cloud. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. I heard the girl talk about it before. It seems she's not unique in Zero Wing. She even mentioned stronger members of the guild. Sinful Flame suddenly spoke up. Based on her expression at the time, I doubt she was lying. Zero Wing should have more monsters that have crossed the 100% threshold. Everyone fell silent after listening to Sinful Flame's interruption. These elders and grand elders were already impressed that Zero Wing had nurtured a monster like Violet Cloud, but she had to be an exception. That fact would be, more or less, acceptable, but they had just been told that Zero Wing had more monsters like the girl. How could they possibly believe this? Regardless of how unbelievable it was, however, Sinful Flame was a reliable source. This is why I've gathered you all here. What is everyone's opinion of this? Do we accept the offer or not? Long Xianglong asked after sweeping his gaze across the crowded reception room. Chapter 26-21, 3 slots. Everyone in the meeting room remained silent, a fanatic light flashing in their eyes after listening to Long Xianglong's declaration. If Black Flame is telling the truth, and he can help 3 of our experts break past the 100% threshold, I think the matter should be negotiable, the crimson-eyed man said. That kind of strength would be extremely helpful during future promotion quests. If we can introduce a few Tier 4 players before the other superpowers, we'll have a head start when raiding mythic field bosses and forbidden lands that have gone untouched. We might even be able to occupy ancient ruins before anyone else has a chance. I concur. While our core secrets are essential, we'll need stronger combatants than we have now if we wish to further Azure's development. If we have a group of Tier 4 experts early on, the other superpowers won't dare target our key resource spots, Butterfly Bell said, nodding. In God's domain, the strong were revered. A strong individual might not benefit a guild when it came to resources, but they were a powerful deterrent for potential enemies, especially if those players were Tier 4 powerhouses. At this stage of the game, no one would dare think of attacking a guild city if it housed a Tier 4 powerhouse. Numbers wouldn't be nearly enough to bridge the gap between a Tier 3 expert strength and that of a Tier 4 player. With 3 Tier 4 experts, specifically experts with extraordinary combat power for their level and tier, Azure would have an effective deterrent. Even without Violet Sword, Azure could safeguard its current resource areas. The chamber might even be able to secure more. On the other hand, keeping a tight hold on the guild's Void Realm legacy would only ensure that Azure's foundations remained steady. It wouldn't help the guild grow. Upon hearing the Crimson-Eyed Man's and Butterfly Bell's words, the independent Grand Elders promptly nodded in agreement. One couldn't make an omelette without breaking eggs. Now that their potential gains were clearly greater than their potential losses, they had no reason to refuse Zero Wing's offer. I have no arguments against accepting Black Flame's offer, but how do we choose which 3 members to send? Duan Hanshan asked Long Xianglong. Interested to hear his answer, the Grand Elders turned toward the Long family's representative. Long Xianglong had summoned them here to discuss this topic, and Silent Wonder was a member of Zero Wing. The Long family was in the best position to negotiate this deal. These 3 training slots were incredibly valuable. If these 3 players broke past their mana body's 100% threshold, they'd rise to the apex of God's domain, even if they were merely Void Realm experts. Whatever faction these experts belonged to would gain quite a bit more authority within the Azure Chamber of Commerce. In fact, the slots distribution might cause a massive authoritarian shift in the guild. I realize what you're all thinking, Long Xianglong said, chuckling as everyone gave him serious looks. Rest assured, the Long family won't try to claim one of the slots for an unworthy candidate. Black Flame has already informed us that no random player will do. The 3 selected individuals must have incredible potential to make a breakthrough. As usual, the 5 families will have priority in selecting 2 players, and if one of their selections isn't a match for the Independence Reserve member, that player will take their place. What does everyone think? Taking the initiative, Butterfly Bell said, in that case, I nominate Boss Flame. We all know his strength and potential. I'm sure everyone can imagine how helpful he'd be to the guild if Boss Flame grows even stronger. As for the younger generation, Solitary Frost is unmatched, and we don't have anyone who can surpass Silk Moon's talent. What are your thoughts? The independent Grand Elders silently nodded their agreement to the suggestion. Normally, such opportunities were reserved for the younger generation, but Sinful Flame was Azure's strongest expert. If he could increase his strength, not only would he become a better deterrent for Azure, but he could also solidify the independent Grand Elders' authority. They didn't mind giving up a training slot for this. Duan Hanshan said nothing to oppose the idea. Rather, he was strongly in favor of the suggestion. Earlier, he had worried that the Long family would unfairly try to claim one of the 3 slots. That would leave Solitary Frost competing for the remaining slot reserved for the 5 families. While the young player had almost no chance of losing, nobody could say for certain that the independent faction of the guild didn't have something hidden up their sleeves. Now that Solitary Frost had been selected for one of the 3 slots, however, he had no issues with the arrangement. I'm afraid Silk Moon won't do. We still haven't been able to reach her, Long Xianglong said, shaking his head. Although Black Flame has given us a 2-day time limit, we should make our decision as soon as possible, just in case. I suggest we give the 3rd slot to Yan Xiaoqian. She's almost as talented as Silk Moon. What does everyone think? Everyone in the room stared at Long Xianglong, astonished. Even Duan Hanshan's jaw almost dropped. These training slots were invaluable, yet Long Xianglong wanted to give all 3 away. Moreover, he had just suggested the Duan family claim one. The Long family and Duan family had a ceaseless feud. Now, however, Long Xianglong had just suggested one of his rival's younger members take the 3rd slot. It was unbelievable. Inwardly, Long Xianglong could only smile bitterly as he watched shock and confusion sweep through the room. He did not wish to give this slot away, either, but unfortunately, with Silk Moon absent, the Long family's only other suitable candidate would be Long Xianglong himself. Due to his rocky relationship with Zero Wing, however, he definitely couldn't go. His pride wouldn't let him. While he could have suggested they send Burning Owl, trying to convince the other Grand Elders of the boy's potential would be difficult. Azure had quite a few stronger players that were Burning Owl's age, after all. Since the Long family was going to lose its slot no matter what, he might as well do the Duan family a favor. In any case, the Long family still had Silent Wonder, and because of her, it would have plenty of chances to benefit off of Zero Wing. Moreover, sending Yan Xiaoqian instead of Burning Owl would allow Azure to fulfill Feng's requirements and make training easier. Her potential had already been acknowledged as only second to Solitary Frost's. Lunatic Long, we have no problems with this arrangement if you don't, Butterfly Bell calmly said. None of the other Grand Elders objected to Long Xianglong's proposal. Yan Xiaoqian was quite talented and only half a step away from the domain realm. She was undoubtedly the best candidate after Silk Moon. That settles it, then. I'll contact Black Flame after this, Long Xianglong announced, concluding the meeting. He then turned to Duan Hanshan and continued, Old Ice Demon, please prepare Solitary Frost and Yan Xiaoqian. Once we sign the contract with Zero Wing, send them to the Starlight Fortress. It will be taken care of. Once the contract has been signed, I'll take them there myself, Duan Hanshan said, nodding. Following which, everyone proceeded to discuss who they would send to Violet Sword's ancient secret land. As soon as they reached a conclusion, the Grand Elders were dismissed, leaving to prepare for the raid. An hour after the meeting had ended, Long Wuxiang represented the Azure Chamber of Commerce in signing a cooperative contract with Feng. In no time at all, not only had Feng gained the rights to one of Ocean Tide City's medium shipyards and golden lands, but he had also received a small warehouse in the city as a gift. Meanwhile, in Azure City's teleportation hall. Are we really going to train with Zero Wing, Uncle Hanshan? Yan Xiaoqian asked Duan Hanshan, who wore a serious expression. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to rejoin Violet Sword's training if we do. Instructor Tori might just give up on us. Although she and Solitary Frost were members of the Azure Chamber of Commerce, and where they trained at was none of Violet Sword's business, these two were considered Tori's disciples. Training with Zero Wing would be a slap in the face to Tori, as if they were declaring that Zero Wing's training was more valuable. While Violet Sword's training is amazingly effective, this is a unique opportunity. Do you think securing these slots was easy? I doubt you'll get a chance like this in the future. Moreover, only Zero Wing can provide this kind of training right now, Duan Hanshan informed her coldly. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Uncle Hanshan, I agree with Xiaoqian. It is only a matter of time before we unlock our mana body's full potential, but opportunities to improve our combat standards and techniques are difficult to come by. We went to great lengths to earn Instructor Tori's guidance. If he finds out that we left to train with Zero Wing, I doubt he'll agree to train us anymore, Solitary Frost said. While he admitted that Zero Wing was quite capable when it came to helping players unlock their mana body's potential, passing up a chance to improve their combat standards and techniques for a chance to unlock their mana bodies a few days sooner was a waste. The only reason he had lost to Silent Wonder, in his opinion, was that he had yet to unlock his mana body fully. If he had, defeating her would have been a piece of cake. With enough time, anyone could unlock their mana body's full potential. Hence, he firmly believed that improving his combat standards and techniques was the true path to power. You're only going to Zero Wing to unlock your mana body. You're not there to learn techniques. It doesn't clash with Instructor Tori's training. I'm sure he won't have an issue with this, Duan Hanshan replied. It's getting late. We should hurry to the Starlight Fortress. We shouldn't make Zero Wing wait too long. With that said, Duan Hanshan led Solitary Frost, Yan Xiaoqian, and a few dozen Azure members through the teleportation array and to the closest NPC town to the Starlight Fortress. Chapter 26-22, Changes to the Starlight Fortress. Star Valley, Starlight Fortress, a long line of players, including tens of thousands, waited to enter the magnificent, ancient fortress. There were also quite a few Tier 3 players among them, creating a spectacular, stunning scene for first-time visitors. Azure's 40-man team stood at the front of the line, gazing at the Starlight Fortress in curiosity. There are so many Tier 3 experts here, one of Azure's Tier 3 players exclaimed, glancing at the line of players behind him. Tier 3 players were still incredibly rare, and even the various major powers considered their Tier 3 experts mainstays in the guild. However, Tier 3 experts were a common sight in the Starlight Fortress. Almost 1 out of every 10 players was a Tier 3 expert. It was amazing. I've heard that quite a few experts have come to the Starlight Fortress for the Demon God's legacy, but aren't there a little too many here? A level 110, Tier 3 male Guardian Knight, another Azure member, commented. He could sense that many of the Tier 3 experts he saw were Refinement Realm experts. Some had even reached the Flowing Water Realm as he had. The mana here feels different, too. It's very calming, and it somehow feels complete. Standing here, it's easier to sense mana than elsewhere, a level 109, Tier 3 female elementalist said. If I could rest and train here, my mana control would improve far quicker than training in the outside world. While Azure's young talents chatted amongst themselves, Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian stared at the fortress, just as surprised by its mana as everyone else. So, this is 3 supreme elements mana? It really is extraordinary, Xiaoqian muttered as she sensed the flow of mana around her. At the same time, realization also dawned. It's no wonder why so many of Zero Wing's members have fully unlocked their mana bodies. If they live in such an environment, their mana control will only grow stronger with time. They'll also have a much easier time unlocking their mana body's potential. The Starlight Fortress's mana, which contained the 3 supreme elements, was no longer a secret to the various superpowers. Only, none of the superpowers had bothered to expose this secret to the public. Naturally, independent players with keen senses had kept their mouths shut, as well, since they wanted to take full advantage of the fortress's benefits. After all, the Starlight Fortress could only house a limited number of player residents. This environment is only a close match for that of ancient times? Solitary Frost wondered, shocked as he bathed in the fortress's mana. He hadn't thought the fortress's environment, which supposedly rivaled that of ancient times, was overly important. It was only close, not the real deal. How could any location in God's domain still have the same environment as before the Great Destruction? In his opinion, the past had only had so many more powerhouses than the present because of how many complete legacies had been available during ancient times. There was no way it could have been because of some ancient environment. Of course, the environment during ancient times had been incredibly mana-dense, but all of the various superpowers had their own special training grounds with high mana density. Some of those training grounds even had mana that was far denser than during ancient times. After reaching the Starlight Fortress and experiencing its mana firsthand, however, Solitary Frost realized how sorely mistaken he had been. Even as a melee player, he could feel his mana affinity growing. Although his affinity didn't increase much, only 10% to 20% at most, this had already significantly improved his mana control. At his standards, as long as he found a good place to train within the Starlight Fortress, he'd likely unlock his mana body's full potential within just 10 days. It was no wonder how Zero Wing had nurtured so many experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. The Starlight Fortress's environment even astounded Duan Hanshan. Damn it! This isn't what I was told. According to the Intelligence Department's report, the mana here should only help players with sharp perception of mana unlock their mana bodies, not ordinary Tier 3 experts. When Duan Hanshan glanced back at the players waiting to enter the fortress, he couldn't help the urge to pummel Azure's Intelligence Department. Duan Hanshan didn't realize that Azure's intelligence reports had been, for the most part, accurate regarding the fortress's environment when it had first opened, but as time had passed, and the Starlight Fortress's magic array had continued to absorb more of the 3 supreme elements' mana from its surroundings, the fortress's mana had steadily improved. Now, even Tier 3 experts who barely noticed mana could reap immense benefits from the Starlight Fortress's environment. As Azure's members fell into a heated discussion over the fortress's mana, a crimson-eyed, blonde woman in silver light armor and carrying a runic greatsword emerged from the fortress. The players in line fell silent the moment they noticed this woman. She was none other than Phythalia, the Starlight Fortress's manager. Phythalia had taken care of many Tier 3 experts and teams that had tried to cause trouble outside of the Starlight Fortress. Just 2 days ago, she had single-handedly annihilated a superpower's 100-man, Tier 3 team. After her terrifying display of strength, some players, who had still considered causing trouble, abandoned the notion. Phythalia's inhuman strength was a direct result of unlocking her mana body's full potential, and now, not even ordinary domain realm experts could be her match. Greetings. You must from the Azure Chamber of Commerce. Guild leader Black Flame is currently preoccupied, so I will lead you to the Fortress Lord's mansion, Phythalia gently announced. How is this possible? Solitary Frost's eyes twitched when he saw Phythalia approach to welcome their group. He and Phythalia were old acquaintances. He had constantly tried to challenge her, and they had clashed several dozen times. Unfortunately, he had lost every match. He had hoped to challenge Phythalia again after his training with Violet Sword. However, he had never dreamed that she'd be responsible for helping Zero Wing welcome them to the Starlight Fortress. This was the commander of Divine Tribe's Divine Him Legion they were talking about. "Commander Phythalia, I didn't expect to find you here. I thought you'd have gone to the Demon God's shrine like every other expert," Duan Hanshan said, similarly surprised to see Phythalia. The Demon God's shrine in Star Valley had become a main training ground for domain realm experts due to the few special secret lands that were connected to the shrine. Not only could players acquire treasures in these secret lands, but they could also use the areas to grow stronger. Of course, only domain realm experts and incredibly strong peak experts could take advantage of these benefits. Due to the powerful monsters and traps within the secret lands, even ordinary peak experts would meet a swift end if they tried to explore them. Moreover, entering the Demon God's shrine wasn't an easy task. One would need a lot of manpower to secure enough entry passes, and to make matters worse, each pass was a single-use item. Generally, only superpowers near Star Valley chose to send their experts to the Demon God's shrine. However, Phythalia was different. Divine Tribe had the only temporary residence within the Starlight Fortress. Entering the Demon God's shrine should be a piece of cake for her. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. While the Demon God's shrine is useful, training in the Fortress Lord's Mansion's battlefield is far better. It's a pity that the battlefield can only accommodate a limited number of people, or I'd use it constantly, Phythalia said, a bitter smile forming as she shook her head. At the same time, she flashed Azure's members an envious look. Due to the recent partnership between Azure and Zero Wing, Feng had decided to allow these young talents to train in the Fortress Lord's Mansion's large battlefield for free for a few days. There's a better place than the Demon God's shrine? The news astonished Solitary Frost. For experts of his and Phythalia's caliber, growing stronger by training was incredibly difficult. The fact that the Demon God's shrine could help domain realm experts was amazing. If not for the problem of distance and manpower, Azure's domain realm experts would have long since made their way to the shrine. And yet, Phythalia insisted that training in the Starlight Fortress's Fortress Lord's mana was even more effective than training in the Demon God's shrine. How could he possibly believe such an outlandish claim? Let's pause our conversation for a moment. Our time is limited. We should head to the mansion immediately, Phythalia said, ignoring the confused looks Azure's members gave her and leading these players straight to the Fortress Lord's mansion. Chapter 26-23, Zero Wing's True Foundation. Starlight Fortress, Fortress Lord's Mansion. As the heart of the Starlight Fortress, the mana within the Fortress Lord's Mansion had changed significantly. From the outside, it looked as if the mansion and its surroundings were encased in a layer of crystals, and the breathtaking sight attracted every passerby's attention. Amazing! The mana here is at least 50% denser than in the outside world. It's no wonder why you deem this to be an excellent training ground, Commander Phythalia, Duan Hanshan praised as he marveled at the glittering castle before him. The Starlight Fortress's mana density had already been extraordinary. It had been so high that it had even rivaled, possibly surpassed, the various superpowers' special training grounds. However, the Fortress Lord's Mansion had even denser mana. One would be hard-pressed to find another location on the Western continent with such dense mana. If players could train in such rich, special mana, their efficiency would skyrocket. Even domain realm experts like Duan Hanshan could likely benefit from an environment with such abundant mana. However, Phythalia merely chuckled in response. Without comment, she led Azure's group into the heavily guarded Fortress Lord's Mansion. When they stepped into the mansion grounds, Duan Hanshan and his entourage from Azure were utterly stupefied. Aside from the multitude of Zero Wing's experts, over 50 personal guards stood guard around the courtyard. Even the weakest of these NPCs was a secret silver guard, and there were as many as 8 fine gold guards present. These NPCs could even annihilate a 1,000-man team of Tier 3 experts. Once their surprise subsided, Azure's members realized how refreshed and light they felt, as if newer, better bodies had replaced their old ones. What's going on? Why do I feel like I have so much more physical control? Solitary Frost exclaimed as he sensed the changes. Dense mana shouldn't have such an effect. It's not just our physical control. I can feel my mana control significantly improving, as well, Xiaoqian said in the team chat. It's no wonder why guild leader Black Flame is so confident that he can help us fully unlock our mana bodies quickly and cross the 100% threshold. They had experienced plenty of mana-rich environments before, including places with denser mana than the Fortress Lord's Mansion, yet none of those places had affected them in this way. They hadn't moved past the mansion's front courtyard, yet Xiaoqian sensed a tremendous increase to her combat power. If she could train here for a while, she was confident that she'd reach the domain realm in no time. Her mana control would reach a whole new level, as well. Sensing the changes, Duan Hanshan turned to Phythalia and asked, "Commander Phythalia, didn't our agreement with guild leader Black Flame only entail 3 training slots? Has there been some mistake?" According to Azure's agreement with Feng, Azure would receive 40 entry slots into Violet Sword's ancient secret land. As a bonus, Zero Wing would also help 3 of Azure's members unlock their mana body's full potential and break past the 100% threshold. Aside from Sinful Flame, Solitary Frost, and Xiaoqian, Azure's members had only come to the Starlight Fortress to prepare for the trip to the ancient secret land and undergo some simple training beforehand. However, Phythalia had led their entire team to this sacred training ground. There must have been some misunderstanding. There's no mistake. All of you will train here for the next few days. As for the 3 slots, those trainees will go somewhere else. Unfortunately, I don't qualify to go with them, Phythalia said, chuckling. The Fortress Lord's Mansion was a one-of-a-kind training environment, so it wasn't unexpected that Duan Hanshan would misunderstand. If possible, Divine Tribe would negotiate for a long-term alliance with Zero Wing to train in the Fortress Lord's Mansion, but it had a limited number of combat rooms. To ensure its own members could continue their development, Zero Wing could only afford to lease a few of these rooms. The only reason that Zero Wing was willing to splurge and lend 40 combat rooms to Azure's members was the high price the chamber had paid. What? The 3 candidates won't be trained here? Duan Hanshan was a little shocked. He still had his doubts that Feng could help Sinful Flame, Solitary Frost, and Xiaoqian unlock their mana body's full potential in a single day, much less help them cross the 100% threshold. However, after witnessing the Fortress Lord's Mansion, Duan Hanshan wondered if the feat were actually possible. After all, this environment drastically improved players' physical and mana control. Azure certainly had nothing like this. Not even Violet Sword had such a wondrous training environment. However, Phythalia had just clearly stated that this precious area wasn't the 3 candidates' trade carrot going somewhere even better. How could Duan Hanshan possibly accept such a concept as truth? Even Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian wondered if the commander were playing some trick, using this as an opportunity to boost Zero Wing's reputation. After giving the matter some thought, however, they quickly dismissed these assumptions. Phythalia had no reason to lie to them. Not only was she the commander of Divine Tribe's second strongest trump card legion, but she was also a famous expert in the West. Why would she lie about such a trivial matter? You're finally here. Our guild leader has been waiting for you for quite some time. The 3 people selected for training, please follow me. Everyone else, please wait outside. While Azure's members were dazed, a man wearing Zero Wings Guild emblem approached from the castle. However, neither Duan Hanshan nor his team had noticed his presence. It felt as if this man didn't actually exist. Yan Tianqing? How is he so strong? Aren't his combat techniques basically a match for those three monsters? Duan Hanshan gave the man before him a suspicious look. According to the report he received on Zero Wing, Yan Tianqing was only an ordinary domain realm expert, yet he had obviously made considerable progress in the domain realm. Yan Tianqing was now entirely capable of standing toe-to-toe with Butterfly Belle and her comrades. Uncle Hanshan, should we go? Yan Xiaoqian asked. Go on. Make sure you listen to Elder Flame later, understand? Duan Hanshan said, nodding. He had only seen Zero Wing as a guild with no foundation, relying entirely on its guild leader for its success. In fact, most superpowers assumed Zero Wing's overall combat power was only on par with ordinary superpowers. However, when it came to other aspects, such as nurturing talented players, Zero Wing couldn't even compare. The guild would need a miracle to become an ordinary superpower in the future. However, Duan Hanshan realized how wrong he and the various superpowers had been after entering Starlight Fortress's Fortress Lord's mansion. Understood. Yan Xiaoqian and Solitary Frost replied, standing at attention. Please, lead the way. Sinful Flame turned to Yan Tianqing once Duan Hanshan had finished instructing the two youngsters. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Follow me, Yan Tianqing responded with a nod. Yan Tianqing then led Sinful Flames 3 into the mansion's lobby and to the legacy room, which was located in the heart of the mansion. 2 level 122, tier 3, fine gold guards stood before the legacy room. Not even Sinful Flame would dare make a rash move before these two personal guards. When the doors parted, Sinful Flame and the two young experts noticed a man standing in the legacy room. He was manipulating the room's magic array, and all of the elemental mana within flowed around him. As the man continued his work, the mana around him grew astonishingly dense, eventually condensing into a white mist. Elemental control? Mana mist? How is this possible? Yan Xiaoqian stared with wide eyes, shocked, at the man within the room. Chapter 26-24, Astonishing Legacy Room. The term elemental control was foreign to ordinary players and most expert players. Normally, players would only understand what elemental control was after they had reached tier 3 and started attempting to unlock their mana bodies. To achieve elemental control was to exert precision control over every type of mana. To accomplish that, one had to understand the properties of the different types of mana in existence. At the very least, one had to grasp the principles behind driving the 4 major elements. At this stage of the game, however, let alone gaining precision control over the various types of mana, the superpowers were still clueless about the operating principles of the 4 major elements. Hence, even domain realm magical class players were incapable of elemental control. Yet, to Yan Xiaoqian's surprise, the man standing inside the legacy room was controlling the ambient mana within the room as if it were a part of his own body and was even using it to strengthen the room's magic array. This was an ability all magical class players in God's domain sought. However, what truly surprised her was the identity of this man. Black Flame. After all, melee classes were inherently less attuned to mana than magical classes. In addition, melee players used mana much less frequently in battle than magical class players, so they should be less familiar with mana than magical class players. Yet, despite being a tier 3 sword king, Feng had actually achieved elemental control. "You're here," Feng said, and promptly accelerated the operation of the legacy room's magic array. He then continued, "The room's magic array is nearly fully operational. The 3 of you will be learning how to unlock your mana bodies here. In a while, each of you will have 5 minutes to experience what it feels like to have a fully unlocked mana body. What you need to do during this time is memorize the feeling of how the mana inside your body flows. Afterward, you will have to think of ways to replicate this feeling. Remember, each of you has only one opportunity. Experience a fully unlocked mana body for 5 minutes. Xiaoqian was surprised at Feng's words. Although the experience lasted only 5 short minutes, if she knew what her fully unlocked mana body would feel like, she would have a much easier time unlocking it afterward. Moreover, she wouldn't have to worry about going astray and taking a long detour. She could simply head straight to her goal. So, this is the secret behind Zero Wing's strength? Solitary Frost similarly gazed at Feng in astonishment. Currently, the various superpowers of God's domain were already struggling to find a location that could help players improve their mana control. Zero Wing, however, could allow players to experience how it felt to have a fully unlocked mana body for 5 minutes. The guild was standing on a completely different playing field from the various superpowers. It's no wonder Zero Wing has so many experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. If the other superpowers were to find out about this, they'd most likely die of envy. Sinful Flame took a closer look at the legacy room upon hearing Feng's explanation. While players could fully unlock their mana bodies given enough time, the sooner a player did so, the sooner they could venture into locations that remained forbidden to ordinary Tier 3 players and obtain opportunities there. They would also have more time for other things. After all, exploring the mana body took up a lot of time and energy. Hence, shortening this exploratory period was also something the various superpowers were currently working on. After fully activating the legacy room's magic array, Feng turned his gaze to Sinful Flame and the others and asked, "Alright, who's first?" "I'll go first. Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian will enter after me," Sinful Flame said. Both Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian nodded in agreement, neither of them dissatisfied by Sinful Flame's decision, as they understood that the first person to experience the legacy room would benefit the least. After all, none of them knew what it felt like to possess a fully unlocked mana body, so they didn't know what they should do to maximize the benefits from the legacy room. By going in later, they would have Sinful Flame's opinions and suggestions for getting a better experience. "Very well. Elder Flame, please," Feng said as he walked out of the legacy room and gestured for Sinful Flame to enter. Once Sinful Flame entered the legacy room, its doors promptly shut. Silence then fell over the antechamber. Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian could not help growing nervous and curious as they eyed the closed doors. Even now, they remained dubious of being able to fully unlock their mana bodies within a day. After all, the further one unlocked one's mana body, the more difficult additional progress became. This wasn't a feat that could be accomplished just by briefly experiencing having a fully unlocked mana body. Trial and error required a lot of time. Meanwhile, as Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian were entertaining such thoughts, 5 minutes flew by. In the next moment, the doors to the legacy room slowly opened, and dense mana poured out the doorway. Both Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian were stunned when they saw Sinful Flame walk out. They could tell that the dense mana coming from the room actually belonged to Sinful Flame. Moreover, the aura Sinful Flame radiated was suffocatingly strong. "Elder Flame, did you fully unlock your mana body?" Xiaoqian exclaimed in disbelief. She knew that, previously, Sinful Flame had unlocked his mana body's potential to only a little over 80%, so reaching 100% should still take him quite some time. Now, just 5 minutes after entering the legacy room, he had already fully unlocked his mana body. How could she believe this? At this moment, let alone Xiaoqian, even Feng was surprised by this situation. Originally, he had intended to use the remaining 3 slots to the legacy room on Zero Wing's experts that had good potential. However, in order to obtain Azure's trust and its Void Realm legacy, he had no choice but to give them to Azure. Even so, Azure's 3 candidates should still emerge from the legacy room a little way off from fully unlocking their mana bodies. After all, unlike Fire Dance and the others, Sinful Flames 3 did not get to experience the trial inside the legacy gate and gain a significant amount of knowledge relating to the mana body. Hence, Feng had been prepared to give them 3 of the ancient potions he had obtained from Poison City. Coupled with the effects of the Fortress Lord's Mansion's combat rooms, those should make it possible for Azure's 3 candidates to fully unlock their mana bodies within 1 day. Feng never thought that Sinful Flame's talent would be this high. Sinful Flame had actually succeeded in fully unlocking his mana body after just 1 trip into the legacy room. His talents were terrifying. During the brief moment Feng was in shock, Sinful Flame turned to look at Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian and advised, "Once you two are inside, don't use the methods you previously used to operate your mana body to experience your fully unlocked mana body. Instead, just focus on sensing how the mana inside your mana body flows. There are many mistakes in the methods we researched. If you insist on using your previous notions to experience your fully unlocked mana body, you'll have a difficult time gaining any improvements. Moreover, while inside, I sense that reaching 100% potential isn't the end for the mana body, but a new beginning. Even though I have fully unlocked my mana body now, I can feel that it is still inferior to the mana body I had inside the room. However, my talents are limited, so I only managed this much for now." Just like Guild Leader Black Flame said, "Give everything you have into memorizing the sensations you feel while inside the room and don't think of anything unnecessary. Only by doing so will you be able to gain a greater harvest. You might even cross the 100% threshold through this opportunity." Upon hearing Sinful Flame's words, Yan Tianqing, who stood to one side, nodded his head thoughtfully. As for Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian, they glanced reflexively at Feng in embarrassment. Previously, they hadn't placed much importance on Feng's words, treating them as mere chatter. They had failed to realize that Feng was actually giving them pointers. In reality, even Feng was startled by Sinful Flame's words. After all, he hadn't been giving any serious advice before, just stating the basic method for utilizing the legacy room. Of course, Feng did not show his surprise on his face, simply nodded silently at Sinful Flame's words. Following which, Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian also entered the legacy room one after another. Time flowed like running water, and 3 days went by quickly. In an ancient forest in the faraway Silvermoon Empire, Violet Light City stood on a mountaintop, overlooking the entire forest. The city teemed with mythologies and Violet Sword's members. Instructor Tori and the others from Violet Sword had arrived quite some time ago and were currently standing above the city's front gate. "Instructor Tori, everyone's ready. Now, we're just waiting for Zero Wings members," Crimson Star reported as she approached Tori. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, I heard that Mythology partnered with several superpowers. Their raid team attempted the elite trial yesterday. The 200-man raid team consisted entirely of bona fide Void Realm experts, some of whom even have fully unlocked mana bodies. However, I heard that even a fully unlocked mana body was of limited help inside the trial. In the end, Mythology's raid team failed to defeat the trial boss. Although Zero Wing has a lot of experts with fully unlocked mana bodies, they hardly have any Void Realm experts in the guild. I wonder if they can even reach the Hero Trials trial boss. Wildfighter said, smirking. I'm afraid that's going to be difficult. I really don't know what Black Flame was thinking back then to suggest filling the majority of the raid team with Zero Wings members. If he finds out about Mythology's failure, he'll most likely die of regret, Crimson Star said, smiling. Once they team wipe a few times, I bet he'll come asking us for reinforcements. The Ancient Secret Lands Elite Trial already reduced the advantages of a fully unlocked mana body by a large margin. If not for Mythology's raid members having extremely high combat standards, they wouldn't even have reached the Elite Trial's trial boss, much less get the chance to fight it. If even the elite trial placed such a heavy suppression on the mana body, the suppression in the hero trial would naturally be much greater. In that case, the chances of Zero Wing's raid team, which barely had any peak experts in it, meeting the hero trial's trial boss were practically zero. While Wildfighter and Crimson Star were conversing, a steel behemoth and several gigantic flying mounts approached Violet Light City, their arrival causing a commotion throughout Violet Light City. Chapter 26-25, Foolish Azure, they're finally here. When Wildfighter saw the approaching Crimson Dragon flying ship and flying mounts, he revealed a faint smile on his face as he commented, "What a grand entrance. It's a pity that they don't know just how much suppression the ancient secret lands trial places on the mana bodies of players. In the end, they'll just be wasting their time and energy. Too bad we have to waste our chance to challenge the hero trial as well," Crimson Star said, sighing. Although Violet Sword had managed to produce the necessary tools for prolonging players' survival inside the ancient secret land ahead of schedule, thanks to Silent Wonder's help, and caught up to Mythology's production speed, Violet Sword had also lost an opportunity to surpass Mythology. Based on their understanding of the ancient secret land's elite trial, they were bound to conquer it if given another 10 days or so. However, the privileges players would obtain from the elite trial were far inferior to those of the hero trial. This matter is no longer relevant. Although we will be losing our opportunity to challenge the hero trial, Mythology won't necessarily be able to clear it either. In the end, our guilds will end up even, Tori said calmly. Looking at the Crimson Dragon flying ship slowly descending from the sky, he continued, "Rather than us, Zero Wing will be the one in great trouble if it fails to conquer the hero trial." "That's right. Zero Wing has most likely made the worst possible decision this time," Wildfighter said, nodding in agreement with Tori's words. Zero Wing had dispatched over 100 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies to challenge the ancient secret land this time. While this would indeed increase Zero Wing's reputation, it would also attract plenty of hidden dangers to the guild. In the current God's domain, the competition between the various superpowers was intensifying. If a guild capable of threatening the livelihoods of the superpowers were to appear, the fate of this guild would go without saying. After today, quite a few superpowers would probably join hands to exterminate this rising threat. Of course, if Zero Wing overcame the hero trial, then it would have a much easier time dealing with those future problems. Conversely, failure would mean a nightmare for the guild. According to the report we received, Zero Wing has come to an agreement with Azure. In exchange for borrowing Azure's strength, Zero Wing has agreed to nurture some of Azure's young talents. If, on top of Azure's help, Zero Wing asks us to send in a large number of peak experts, Zero Wing might actually have a fighting chance of defeating the trial boss, Crimson Star said. The only question now is whether Zero Wing will make this request or not. Azure's leaders have gone insane. While Zero Wing's top combatants are indeed exceedingly strong, how could Zero Wing possibly be a match for Violet Sword in nurturing talents? Because of this matter, many in the guild's upper echelon are very dissatisfied with Azure, Wildfighter said in exasperation. The guild leader also declared that we are to stop nurturing Azure's young talents from now on. With this, Azure has basically severed Solitary Frost's and Yan Xiaoqian's futures. Tori revealed an ugly expression at the mention of this matter. As for Crimson Star, she shook her head and sighed when she thought about the futures of those two talents. Setting aside Azure's other members, Solitary Frost and Yan Xiaoqian were people capable of catching Tori's eye. They had the potential to become legendary figures in Azure. This was just like the commander of Violet Sword's strongest trump card Legion. Back then, the commander had similarly caught Tori's eye. Now, he had already become a legendary figure in Violet Sword, his strength rivaling even the 5 great super guild's old monsters. Such experts could bring prosperity to an entire guild. Moreover, Solitary Frost and Yan Xiaoqian's youth meant they could guarantee stability for Azure for the next 2 or 3 decades. Now, however, Azure had personally severed the futures of these two people. During the time Wildfighter and the others were conversing with each other, the Crimson Dragon flying ship and the flying mounts landed before Violet Light City's main gate. A short moment later, cloaked players could be seen alighting from the Crimson Dragon flying ship and flying mounts. These players had used their black cloaks to conceal only their statistics. They did not bother covering up their appearances and guild emblems, so it was very easy to discern their identities. It seems Azure is taking its partnership with Zero Wing quite seriously. It actually sent Sinful Flame along on this expedition, Crimson Star exclaimed when she saw Sinful Flame jumping off one of the flying mounts. Sinful Flame was well known throughout the Western continent. His combat standards and combat power were extraordinary, and even in Violet Sword, one would be hard-pressed to find an expert who could match him. Normally, legendary figures like Sinful Flame would have a high degree of freedom in their guilds. Only when the guild encountered truly troublesome matters would they take action. Sure enough, Solitary Frost has come as well. If he finds out that Floating Light gained an opportunity to receive special training in the ancient secret land because of Azure's actions, he'll most likely die of envy. Wildfighter sighed when he noticed Solitary Frost among the Azure members present. Aside from the trial challenges, the ancient secret land also housed a few special locations offering incredible training environments. Only, the price to enter these special locations was stupendous. Originally, out of respect for the Zeus Corporation and instructor Tori, Violet Sword had been hesitant to assign the last 2 entry slots it held. However, due to Azure's recent actions, Violet Sword's upper echelon decided to grant one of the slots to one of its young talents, Floating Light. In terms of talent, Floating Light was inferior to Solitary Frost. However, because he had received Tori's personal guidance while training inside the ancient secret land special environment, his combat standards had undergone a qualitative transformation. Now, he could partially integrate bronze combat techniques with his Tier 3 skills. Had Solitary Frost, who possessed superior talents, received the same training as well, his combat power would similarly skyrocket. At that time, Wildfighter might no longer be able to hold back when fighting him. Unfortunately, Solitary Frost missed out on this opportunity. Instructor Tori, how is the preparation of the special tools coming along? Feng asked as he arrived before Tori. They're all ready, Tori assured. Glancing at the group of nearly 200 players standing behind Feng, he asked, how many people do you wish us to send, Guild Leader Black Flame? What do you think of 30? Feng replied. After all was said and done, this was a partnership between Zero Wing and Violet Sword. Hence, after giving the matter some thought, he decided to have Violet Sword send 30 players to join the raid team, a number that was neither too high nor too low. With this, when the raid succeeded, Violet Sword wouldn't seem completely unrelated. The Super Guild should also have no problem dispatching this number of peak experts. 30? That's fine with us, Tori said while stroking his white beard. He then turned to Wildfighter and Crimson Star and said, afterward, you two will personally lead the team and provide your full support to Guild Leader Black Flame. Understood. Wildfighter and Crimson Star responded simultaneously. However, when Violet Sword's experts heard Tori commanding Wildfighter and Crimson Star to participate in the raid, they were baffled. In their opinion, it was already a big deal for Tori to have Vice Commander Floating Light, a domain realm expert, take part in the raid. They never thought that he would have 2 of the guild's prestigious instructors participate as well. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Anybody capable of becoming an instructor in Violet Sword was part of the core upper echelon of the guild. Rarely would these individuals lead a guild expedition. And if they did, the mission would normally be critical. Now, however, Tori was actually sending not 1, but 2 instructors to participate in the raid. If word of this matter spread, it would definitely cause a sensation in the guild. Alright, make the necessary preparations according to our previous arrangements, Wildfighter commanded as he looked at the team of experts standing behind him. At Wildfighter's command, 28 of the peak and apex experts present promptly went into action. Guild leader Black Flame, please follow me. We still need to walk quite a distance to reach the secret land's entrance, Crimson Star said calmly as she approached Xiaofan. Once we arrive there, I believe all the necessary items should be ready. Alright, I'll be troubling you, then, Xiaofan said, nodding. He then had everyone on his team follow Crimson Star into Violet Light City. Chapter 26-26, Ancient Mana. The sight of Crimson Star guiding Zero Wing's team through Violet Light City triggered discussions among the players residing in the city. Who are those people? Violet Sword's Crimson Star is actually guiding them. It's not just Crimson Star. I heard that Violet Sword's instructor Tori personally welcomed those people at the front gate just now. Amazing. Could those people be big shots of some super guild? Mythology's members grew curious when they saw Feng's group. Violet Sword's members, on the other hand, found this situation astonishing. Crimson Star was one of Violet Sword's Grand Elders. Even when the guild leader of an ordinary superpower visited Violet Sword, she would appear only to give a brief greeting, at most. She definitely wouldn't take the initiative to guide them. Meanwhile, standing on the walls protecting the ancient castle in the heart of Violet Light City, a team of 30-plus players was quietly observing Feng's group. Every member of this team was a Tier 3 expert at level 113 or above. Zero Wing's members are finally here, an assassin youth with 2 short swords said coldly as he eyed Feng with killing intent. Sandstorm, you'd better not do anything rash. They are currently Violet Sword's guests, a tall woman carrying a war hammer and a sturdy shield, standing beside the youth, warned. Relax. I know that much, Sandstorm assured as he concealed his killing intent. However, our agreement with Violet Sword is limited to the city. Once they enter the secret land, they'll be fair game. At that time, we'll get our revenge for the humiliation we suffered at the Starlight Fortress. I'm going to teach Zero Wing how foolish it is to offend our vice commander. That's for sure, the tall woman said, nodding. Although the vice commander's orders were to investigate first what Zero Wing and Violet Sword are up to inside the secret land before taking action against them, I'm sure she won't say anything about it if we just take care of Zero Wing as soon as they enter the secret land. After all, the demon god has clearly specified that if we manage to kill Black Flame even once, we'll receive a large number of contribution points and be able to train in the battlefields inside the demon god's shrine. If we bring him to the demon god, we can even receive the demon god's legacy directly. Previously, Black Flame only managed to win against us because of his fully unlocked mana body. However, he won't be as lucky this time, Sandstorm said, a smirk appearing on his face. This time, he'll learn what true despair feels like. The demon god's shrine was an extraordinary training ground, which was something every superpower on the Western continent knew. However, most superpowers were still unaware that the demon god's shrine contained some legacies related to unlocking the mana body, which one could obtain only by completing one of the 10 great quests offered in the shrine. Mythology was one of the few superpowers that had managed to complete one of the 10 great quests and obtain a mana body legacy. As a result, Sandstorm and a few other members in Mythology had already fully unlocked their mana bodies. With the support of the Super Guild's special advanced battle array, their combat power had now reached a completely different level. Just their team of 30-plus players were more than capable of defeating the entirety of Netherworld Empire's Hell Legion. During the time Sandstorm and the other members of Mythology were discussing how to attack Zero Wing's group, Feng and the others had arrived before the ancient secret land's entrance, which was inside the central castle. The entrance to the secret land was a spatial tear leading to the otherworld where the ancient city stood. Normally, spatial tears were incredibly unstable. However, a magic array had been laid to stabilize the spatial tear, so instability was not a problem. Unfortunately, due to the ravages of time, the magic array was no longer as powerful as it was before. Now, it could grant the teleportation mark, which held the spatial coordinates of the ancient secret land, to only a maximum of 400 players that entered the spatial tear. These teleportation marks would be replenished only after the players that held these marks had left the secret land. So, this is an ancient secret land? When Feng arrived before the spatial tear and sensed the mana flowing from it, he was astonished. In the past, he had only heard and seen pictures of Violet Sword's ancient secret land. He had never experienced it. Now, just brushing against the excess mana flowing from the ancient secret land filled him with energy. If even the effects of the excess mana were already so potent, Feng found it difficult to imagine how standing inside the ancient secret land itself would feel like. For a moment, he wished he could stay inside the ancient secret land forever. Guild leader Black Flame, here is your alchemy array, Crimson Star said as she handed a black cylinder to Feng. Make sure to use it before you enter. It will help you fend off the overly strong mana inside and prevent you from exploding from mana overload. At the same time, it will allow you to regulate the flow of your mana effectively so that you won't die from energy exhaustion. Thanks. Feng nodded and accepted the black cylinder from Crimson Star. He then activated the magic array on the device. A special rune appeared on his body, followed by a faint layer of light wrapped around him. Although the ancient secret land was an excellent location for training, for current players, it was both a curse and a blessing. Incredibly dense mana filled the ancient secret land. The ambient mana in the secret land was so dense that players would have their mana's volume and flow rate forcibly increased to a point where they would lose control over their own mana. As a result, their energy consumption rate would increase drastically, which led to death by starvation within half an hour of entering the ancient secret land. If players wished to survive inside the ancient secret land for longer periods, they had to rely on alchemy arrays to regulate their mana. Even so, players could remain inside the ancient secret land for only 7 days. The alchemy array used was a consumable. Hence, Violet Sword was desperately trying to increase the production speed and volume of this alchemy array. Otherwise, even if they held the ancient secret land, they could only stare at it. After Feng and his group were all ready, Crimson Star led them into the spatial tear and disappeared from the castle. Everyone was immediately teleported to a dense forest. All around them were ancient trees towering over 100 meters. Translucent crystals adorned these trees, giving the trees and the forest a mesmerizing beauty. The mana inside the forest was also so dense that it had condensed into white mist. However, despite the white mist, everyone's vision remained unaffected. During the time everyone was enjoying the scenery around them, a roar suddenly came from a distance and echoed throughout the forest. Upon turning toward the origin of the roar, everyone quickly noticed a 200-meter-tall, one-horned bear fighting an equally tall, six-eyed ape. Every one of the two beasts' actions shook the entire forest and deformed the terrain around the monsters. Damn it! Why are two region chiefs fighting each other? Crimson Star frowned as she watched the battle of the two giant behemoths. The ancient secret land was an incredibly dangerous place. Not only were there plenty of monsters here, but each region in the secret land would have a powerful boss ruling over it. Violet Sword and Mythology had labeled these bosses region chiefs. The weakest among these region chiefs was already a level 120 mythic monster with combat standards at the Trial Tower's 6th floor. In addition, all monsters found within the ancient secret land had incredibly powerful bodies. Even an ordinary level 120 mythic monster here could rival a level 120 mythic ranked archaic species found in the outside world. Normally, both Violet Swords and Mythology's members would do their best to avoid these region chiefs when visiting the ancient secret land. The reason for this wasn't just the high casualty rate incidental to challenging these region chiefs. There was also the fact that fights with these region chiefs would attract the attention of nearby monsters. Players that fought a region chief would end up having to fight a continuously increasing number of monsters and eventually suffer annihilation. 2 region chiefs appearing in this location could be considered to be the worst-case scenario. In the outside world, there were indeed instances where players could take advantage of monsters fighting each other. However, the monsters inside the ancient secret land were incredibly smart. So long as they sensed the presence of players, they would promptly stop fighting each other and cooperate to kill the intruding players first before resuming their fight. They wouldn't give players any opportunities to take advantage of it all. Why is our luck so horrid? We actually came across 2 region chiefs having a territorial battle. Sandstorm, who was currently hidden on a tree some distance away from Xiaofang's group, complained in frustration when he saw the 2 fighting behemoths straying closer to his team's position. Alright, forget about Zero Wing for now. We need to leave this place quickly. We'll be doomed if those 2 region chiefs discover us, the tall, female guardian knight standing beside Sandstorm said. I know. Sandstorm said, gritting his teeth as he shot a glare at the distant Feng. As Sandstorm's group was preparing to leave the area, Crimson Star also had everyone on the team prepare for a hasty retreat. Guild leader Black Flame, we need to leave this area fast. We'll be in trouble if we stay here any longer, Crimson Star said hurriedly as she looked at Feng, who was still quietly observing the 2 battling region chiefs. Shouldn't that way be the shortest path to the ancient city? Feng asked as he pointed toward the 2 behemoths. If we circle around them, wouldn't we need to waste half a day? That is, indeed, the shortest path to the ancient city, but if we get caught by those 2 region chiefs, instead of wasting half a day, all of us will end up dying here. Crimson Star snapped in exasperation when she heard that Feng was actually still planning to take this route to the ancient city. However, she also understood Feng's thoughts. They could stay inside the ancient secret land for only 7 days. If they wasted half a day on a detour, they would be under much greater pressure when raiding the hero trial. After all, with how many monsters there were inside the trial, they would need 5 or 6 days just to reach the trial boss. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Moreover, the 2 region chiefs were mythic bosses. In the outside world, coming across 2 mythic bosses would be akin to hitting the jackpot. However, they were currently inside the ancient secret land, facing monsters far stronger than those in the outside world. Challenging 2 mythic bosses simultaneously would simply be suicide. Otherwise, Violet Sword wouldn't have to be so careful when exploring the ancient secret land. Guild leader Black Flame, let's leave. If we don't go now, we'll enter the perception range of those 2 region chiefs, Wildfighter advised urgently. Our main goal is to clear the trial. We don't need to fight those 2 region chiefs. I guess you're right. We don't need to fight those 2, Feng said, nodding. He then turned to look at Crimson Star and Wildfighter and added, I'll lure them away. Use this opportunity to sneak past them. After saying so, Feng dashed straight for the 2 behemoths. Chapter 26-27, Feng soared. Upon seeing Feng charging toward the 2 distant behemoths, Crimson Star and Wildfighter turned pale. He's insane. Crimson Star cursed when she saw that Feng had already gotten over 100 yards away. Immediately, she turned to the rest of the team and ordered, everyone, retreat together with floating light. Do not stop for anything. Retreat to Violet Light City. Wildfighter, hold the rear with me. Got it. Wildfighter responded and unsheathed his weapon, a solemn expression appearing on his face. In this situation, Violet Sword's members could not help growing nervous. As for Sandstorm and the other members of Mythology spectating from a distance, their eyes nearly fell out of their sockets when they saw Feng's actions. That crazy Black Flame. He's actually charging to the 2 region chiefs. Sandstorm cursed. Then, he commanded hastily, "Hurry! Retreat quickly!" As soon as Sandstorm finished speaking, Mythology's members, who had been preparing to retreat from the area already, picked up their pace with serious expressions. Black Flame truly is insane. He's actually planning to drag everyone down with him. Did Violet Sword's people not warn him about the region chiefs here? The tall, female guardian knight grumbled, similarly cursing at Xiaofan as she jumped down from the tree she had been standing on. The region chiefs of the ancient secret land were considerably stronger than mythic monsters found in the outside world. In terms of strength and speed, they were at least 30% better. Trying to take on just one of these region chiefs with a 200-man, Tier 3 team was already an incredibly difficult task, incurring plenty of casualties. When coupled with the endless stream of other monsters that would continuously join in on the battle, any team that tried to challenge a region chief was doomed. However, what made the ancient secret lands region chiefs truly difficult to deal with wasn't their physical prowess but their massive perception range. When these region chiefs fought players, they could manipulate all the mana within a 5,000-yard radius, relying on this mana to detect all movements within range. One could say that, so long as there were players within a region chief's passive perception range of 500 yards or players fighting a region chief, then all players within a 5,000-yard radius of the region chief would become its targets. If players failed to kill the aggravated region chief, then they wouldn't be able to shake off its pursuit. This was also the reason why Mythology and Violet Sword had labeled the mythic bosses in the ancient secret land region chiefs. Normally, teams that accidentally came across a region chief were still fine. The majority of the team's members had a chance to escape with their lives. However, only annihilation awaited teams that came across two region chiefs simultaneously. Even before the female guardian knight finished speaking, Mythology's members had already turned tail and run. However, after everyone had taken just a few strides, the mana around them suddenly stirred. At the same time, they felt as if a pair of eyes were looking down on them. Obviously, the two region chiefs had already locked on to their life auras. Damn it! Everyone, split up and retreat. Every survivor counts. Sandstorm yelled. When he looked at Xiaofang's distant figure, he felt himself going crazy. For a moment, he even suspected that Xiaofan had deliberately provoked the two region chiefs. Meanwhile, when Crimson Star and the others saw the two region chiefs suddenly stop fighting and rapidly head in their direction, their complexions darkened. If they could not put a 5,000-yard distance between themselves and the two bosses, they had no hope of escaping the battle at all. A 5,000-yard distance. Even Tier 3 experts like themselves would still take quite some time to cover 5,000 yards. To make matters worse, tools were ineffective inside the ancient secret land, so they couldn't teleport away or accelerate their retreat from the battlefield. Crazy bastard. He's going to get us all killed. Floating Light, who was already retreating, cursed when he felt the two region chiefs locking on to his life aura. Although players wouldn't lose an entire level from dying inside the ancient secret land, the amount of EXP lost was still not a trivial matter. After all, at their level, just leveling up once took a lot of time. Hence, even a small percentage of their EXP equaled 1 or 2 days' worth of hard work. As Floating Light was leading the retreat of Violet Sword's members, he suddenly noticed something. Zero Wings and Azure's members were actually still standing in their original positions. It was as if they had not heard Crimson Star's orders at all. What are they doing? Are they planning to die with Black Flame? Floating Light was baffled as he looked at Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian. Setting the others aside, it was incredibly strange for Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian to defy Crimson Star. After all, the two of them were geniuses that had trained under Crimson Star during their sojourn at Violet Sword. The two of them knew very clearly how powerful and capable Crimson Star was. Crimson Star's calling for a retreat showed just how dangerous their current situation was, yet Solitary Frost and Xiaoqian had actually disobeyed her command and remained where they were. Moreover, they wore indescribably calm expressions, their reactions making it seem as if nothing was happening. Vice Commander, let's quickly retreat. This is Zero Wing and Azure's matter. Instructor Crimson Star and Instructor Wildfighter won't be able to hold off those two region chiefs for very long, a retreating Tier 3 assassin urged hurriedly when he noticed Floating Light pause. I guess you're right, Floating Light said, nodding before resuming his retreat. At the same time, he could not help glancing at Solitary Frost and Yen Xiaoqian with pity. Originally, with Solitary Frost's and Yen Xiaoqian's talents, they should have been able to shine brightly in God's domain. However, their futures were now ruined because they belonged to a guild like the Azure Chamber of Commerce and followed an unreliable team leader like Feng. However, Floating Light had just taken a few steps forward when the deafening roar of a bear came from behind him and echoed throughout the forest, causing it to tremble. Immediately afterward, a beam of mana shot past the area beside Floating Light's group, leaving behind a massive trench on the ground it passed through. Seen from afar, the ground looked like pudding that a spoon had scraped. The fight started? Floating Light's complexion further darkened as he took in the massive trench a short distance away. This was the power of the ancient secret land's mythic monsters. Any random attack of theirs could transform the terrain around them. Let alone one person, even a 100-man, Tier 3 expert team would be cannon fodder in front of these region chiefs. If one really wished to take on a region chief, they would need a 200-man team of Tier 3 peak experts at the very minimum. Moreover, the team would need 2 or 3 domain realm MTs working together to tank the region chief. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stop the boss's attacks adequately. In fact, even a single mistake might result in a team wipe. After Floating Light's group ran for another 50 yards or so, a lightning bolt suddenly shot past them some distance away, followed by the ear-splitting crack of thunder. As the thunder faded, the sky above them darkened abruptly. In the next moment, the 200-meter-tall, six-eyed gorilla went flying overhead and crashed heavily into the ground a few hundred yards ahead of them, the ground shattering at the impact. As for the giant gorilla, it stumbled quite a bit as it landed and very nearly lost its footing. After stabilizing itself, the gorilla glared into the distance before releasing a deafening roar. It then charged forward, completely ignoring Floating Light and the other members of Violet Sword, who stood only a short distance away from it. What is going on? Floating Light was confounded by this situation. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Violet Sword's other peak experts similarly could not help rubbing their eyes, thinking that they were hallucinating. However, no matter how much they rubbed, the several massive craters the six-eyed gorilla's feet left behind did not disappear. Before Floating Light and the others could react to this unexpected development, though, another deafening boom and the snapping of trees entered their ears. However, these sounds came from quite a distance away. There should still be some separation between the origin of these sounds and the six-eyed gorilla that had just charged past them. Floating Light and the others turn around reflexively, looking for the origin of these sounds. They spotted a cloaked man wielding two longswords standing atop a tree. Meanwhile, some distance away from this swordsman was a gigantic bear that had just steadied itself, glaring hatefully at him. The six-eyed gorilla was also stalking toward this man, seemingly searching for an opportunity to strike at him. However, Floating Light and the others could also see a hint of fear in the one-horned bear's and six-eyed gorilla's eyes. It was clear that the two region chiefs were afraid of the tiny human on the tree. Chapter 26-28, Suppressing the Region Chiefs. Floating Light and the other members of Violet Light gaped in shock at the man standing atop the gigantic tree that was over 100 meters tall. Just how high is his strength? Those were two level 120-plus region chiefs. Either of those region chiefs could wipe out a 200-man, Tier 3 team of peak experts. Facing both region chiefs, even a team of such caliber was sure to get annihilated. At this moment, however, Feng had single-handedly suppressed and even repelled the two region chiefs. This was simply unbelievable. Is this why they didn't retreat before? When Floating Light looked at the two region chiefs warily eyeing Feng and thought back to the fact that Solitary Frost and Yan Xiaoqian had not moved even after Crimson Star gave the command to retreat, realization immediately dawned upon him. With such a monstrous team leader, there was indeed no need to retreat. At this moment, Floating Light and the other retreating members of Violet Sword weren't the only ones shocked by this situation. Crimson Star and Wild Fighter, who were planning to hold the rear, as well as the frantically retreating members of Mythology, nearly had their eyes fall out of their sockets when this incredible scene played out before them. What did he do during this period? How did he raise his strength attribute to such an extent? Sandstorm's heart roiled with shock as he stared at Feng. During the fight at the Starlight Fortress, the strength Feng displayed was just close to reaching the Tier 4 standard. Moreover, he had relied on his fully unlocked mana body to do so. However, just how long had passed since that fight? In Sandstorm's opinion, even if Feng were incredibly lucky and obtained one or two pieces of epic equipment or gained some special encounters, he would be fortunate to match the strength of Tier 4 mythic monsters of the same level. At this moment, however, Feng's strength had actually grown to a level where he could overwhelm even the region chiefs of the ancient secret land. However, before anyone could snap out of their stupor, the two region chiefs took action once more. Firstly, the one-horned bear let loose an angry roar before slamming its front paws into the ground and shattering it. A twofold magic array then formed beneath Feng's feet, covering a 300-yard radius. Immediately afterward, thick, stone walls emerged, bordering the magic array and enveloping Feng completely. Tier 4 spell, Earth's Embrace. As the one-horned bear was taking action, the six-eyed gorilla leaped into the sky above Feng. The gorilla then summoned a crimson magic array with a 400-yard radius above the swordsman. Tier 4 spell, Fire Dragon's Descent. In the next moment, a fire dragon larger than the six-eyed gorilla and made entirely out of flames emerged from the magic array. It spread its wings as it descended toward Feng. Those two region chiefs actually know how to coordinate their spells? Crap. That's cheating. Shouldn't mythic bosses be upright and use spells in turns? Everyone was stunned and they saw the two region chiefs' coordinated assault. Coordinating skills and spells was an extremely common thing for players. However, this was the first time they had seen monsters, particularly Tier 4 bosses, do so. Hence, everyone could not help despairing at the sight. For Tier 3 players like themselves, just one Tier 4 spell was already plenty difficult to deal with. If not handled appropriately, the result would very likely be an instant team wipe. If they had to go up against two coordinated Tier 4 spells, even Tier 3 MTs with their life-saving skills activated would be killed instantly, unless they had invulnerability skills or spells. It's really over this time. Crimson Star shook her head and sighed when she saw the two coordinated Tier 4 spells. If it were her, she could defend against one Tier 4 spell using a Tier 3 curse. However, even she would be powerless against two Tier 4 AoE spells. This didn't mean that she had just one Tier 3 curse in her arsenal of spells, in fact, she had several. Currently, however, it was simply impossible for her, and most likely all magical class players in God's domain, to double-cast two Tier 3 curses. Ha ha ha. So what if you have amazing strength? Let's see how you deal with this. Sandstorm burst out in laughter when he saw the two region chiefs' coordinated assault on Feng. The swordsman's strength had indeed exceeded his expectations. In fact, he felt powerless when he witnessed Feng's fearsome display, and it was definitely impossible for them to exact revenge on him this time. However, being able to see the two region chiefs killing Feng now wasn't a bad outcome either. After all, he knew that, because of the demon god's curse, the swordsman would suffer triple the death penalty every time he died. Although they were currently inside the ancient secret land where the death penalty was not as stringent as that in the outside world, a triple death penalty would still deal Xiaofan a heavy blow. However, while everyone was looking at the gigantic fire dragon descending toward Xiaofan, the swordsman surprisingly maintained his composure. Moreover, aside from Xiaofan, the spectating members of Zero Wing and Azure also remained indescribably calm in this situation. Finally, a chance. Solitary Frost muttered as he watched Xiaofan closely, his eyes glittering with joy and excitement. At this moment, aside from Solitary Frost, everyone else from the Azure Chamber of Commerce also had excited expressions. What's wrong with them? Floating Light was perplexed as he looked at Solitary Frost and the others. Xiaofan was about to die here, yet Solitary Frost and the others were actually feeling excited about it? Come! While Floating Light was fraught with confusion, Xiaofan made his move. In the next moment, Xiaofan sheathed Killing Ray and held the abyssal blade with both hands. He then jumped up from the treetop, propelling himself straight toward the descending fire dragon. He's going to resist the attack head-on? Floating Light could not help but disapprove of Xiaofang's decision when he saw the swordsman heading for the fire dragon. A Tier 4 spell could exhibit much greater power than a mythic monster could with its physical body. This was especially true in the ancient secret lands environment. Due to the abundant mana here, skills and spells would exhibit much greater power than they normally could in the outside world. A Tier 4 spell cast by a mythic monster could instantly kill a Tier 3 metric tons who had a life-saving skill activated. Just as Xiaofan was about to collide with the fire dragon, he suddenly raised the abyssal blade overhead and swung it at the fire dragon. Shatter! The phantom of a gigantic greatsword suddenly appeared in the sky, creating a pitch-black wall there as it slashed toward the descending fire dragon. First Sword, Light Shadow. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. In the next moment, the pitch-black wall not only bisected the fire dragon but also continued extending toward the six-eyed gorilla hovering over 100 yards above the fire dragon. Upon seeing the approach of the pitch-black wall, the six-eyed gorilla panicked and instinctively tried to flee the area. However, the pitch-black wall extended far too rapidly. Even though the six-eyed gorilla flew as fast as it could, it still failed to outmaneuver the pitch-black wall and ended up getting one of its arms cut off. The six-eyed gorilla let loose an agonized shriek that echoed throughout the forest at the grievous injury. Shortly afterward, an arm the size of a mountain fell into the forest below. A massive crater formed around the arm from the force of the impact. As for the six-eyed gorilla, it plummeted to the ground and tumbled helplessly for some distance. Due to the loss of its arm, the gorilla's combat power also decreased significantly. Chapter 26-29, Ancient Secret Lands Power. How is this possible? That's a mythic monster we're talking about. How could a Tier 3 player like him break through its defensive threshold? Crimson Star and Wildfighter could not believe their eyes as they watched the tumbling six-eyed gorilla. Not only had Xiaofan shattered a Tier 4 spell with a single move, but he had even used the same move to injure the six-eyed gorilla severely. On paper, the gorilla had only lost around 500,000 HP from the attack, which was nothing compared to its 2 billion HP, but in reality, his attack had caused far more damage than that. There were two general types of attacks in God's domain. The first type reduced the HP of the target, while the other weakened the target's defenses. In the case of the former, if the target's HP fell to 0, then they would die. In the case of the latter, if the target had its defenses destroyed, then its physical body would suffer damage, which would, in turn, reduce the target's combat power, as well as the difficulty of killing said target. Only, it was incredibly difficult for players to execute attacks capable of destroying a monster's defenses, particularly those of high-ranking monsters, as the stronger a monster was, the higher its defensive threshold would be. Normally, players couldn't destroy the defenses of a monster of the same tier, much less those of a higher tier. the best players could do against higher-tiered monsters was cause minor injuries and continuously stack these minor injuries to reduce the monster's combat power. Against the six-eyed gorilla, only an attack carrying power at the peak Tier 4 standard had a chance of overwhelming its defensive threshold. However, despite being a Tier 3 player, Feng had actually managed this feat without resorting to external tools. This was inconceivable. Meanwhile, when Sandstorm and the other members of mythology saw this scene, they, too, gaped in shock. Can he still be considered a player? There were no words to describe the shock Sandstorm felt as he gazed at Feng right now. In the eyes of ordinary players, having the ability to surpass a monster's defensive threshold only meant that they could reduce the combat power of the target monster. However, for peak experts and apex experts, who frequently fought high-tiered monsters, having such an ability held an entirely different meaning. For peak experts and apex experts, having such an ability meant that they could solo kill monsters. The monsters in God's domain were born with high HP and defense, particularly HP. Even if players could inflict over 1,000,000 damage with their attacks, this amount of damage was nothing for high-tiered monsters like mythic monsters. Such damage wouldn't overcome the monster's battle recovery. An army of players was necessary to kill high-tiered monsters. Hence, in God's domain, it was common knowledge that even if a player's raw power surpassed that of high-tiered monsters, solo killing these monsters would still be impossible, especially Grand Lords or higher-ranked monsters. This held true even for current Tier 3 players. However, there was one method that players could use to defeat such high-tiered monsters, executing attacks surpassing the target monster's defensive threshold. Attacks that surpassed a monster's defensive threshold could inflict severe injuries on the monster's physical body. Moreover, after injuring a monster up to a certain point, aside from reducing the monster's combat power, players could also force monsters into a weakened state, which would drastically reduce their defense and maximum HP. If players managed to corner a monster to the point where it entered a heavily weakened state, they could even impose the HP loss debuff on the target monster and thoroughly nullify the monster's battle recovery. If a monster lost its battle recovery, which was also its strongest ability, solo killing it would no longer be impossible. With sufficient stamina and concentration, players could slowly but surely grind the monster to death. Now that Feng was capable of surpassing the six-eyed gorilla's defensive threshold, this meant that Feng could solo kill it. Meanwhile, a player having the ability to solo kill a Tier 4 mythic monster was simply unheard of in God's domain. At this moment, however, let alone the spectating players, even Feng himself found this situation astonishing. Why did Light Shadow's destructive power increase by so much? Feng was confused as he looked at the six-eyed gorilla's severed arm. Judging by the damage to its HP, my attack's raw power should still be far from the peak Tier 4 standard. Light Shadow should be just slightly stronger than a Tier 4 spell, yet the actual destruction it caused is no different from that of a peak Tier 4 attack. Could this be due to the ancient Secret Lands environment? Meanwhile, as Feng was analyzing the situation, the one-horned bear rushed toward him. The bear's gigantic frame made it seem as if a small mountain was charging at him. In fact, there was even the vague image of a mountain overlapping with the one-horned bear's figure. Tier 4 skill, Crumbling Mountain. The AoE of the one-horned bear's attack covered a 50-yard radius. Feng responded by raising the abyssal blade above his head once more. Light Shadow. When using Light Shadow this time, however, Feng placed the majority of his focus on perceiving the mana around himself. He wanted to see just what was enabling his mana technique to exhibit such immense power. When Feng started swinging the abyssal blade, another pitch-black wall formed on the battlefield, shattered the Phantom Mountain, and subsequently landed on the one-horned bear's left shoulder. Roar! When the pitch-black wall cut into the one-horned bear's shoulder, the bear let loose an agonized howl. Its HP also instantly fell by more than 620,000. Although Feng's attack this time did not sever the one-horned bear's left arm, it prevented the bear from freely moving its injured arm. Now, the bear could rely on only its 2 legs and 1 arm to stabilize itself. After suffering this grievous injury, the one-horned bear continuously growled at Xiaofan angrily. However, fear was also clear in the bear's eyes. Upon seeing this scene, Floating Light and those of Violet Sword who were retreating were dumbfounded once more. How is this possible? That move just now wasn't a skill? Floating Light felt as if his worldview had been refreshed when he saw the one-horned bear daunted by Xiaofan. In Floating Light's opinion, the attack Xiaofan used to injure the 6-eyed gorilla heavily should be a special skill. Otherwise, there was no way the attack could be so powerful. However, only 2 or 3 seconds after Xiaofan retaliated against the 6-eyed gorilla, the swordsman was using the same move against the one-horned bear. There was no way such a powerful skill could have such a brief cooldown. The only explanation for this situation was that Xiaofan wasn't using a skill or spell, but a special technique instead. By simply relying on a special technique, Xiaofan was actually capable of heavily injuring mythic monsters. Moreover, these mythic monsters were even the ancient Secret Lands region chiefs. Nobody would believe Floating Light if he told this tale to others. After repelling the one-horned bear, Xiaofan himself was stunned as well. So, this is the reason why the ancient Secret Land can help players reach Tier 4? Xiaofan thought as he looked at the closing spatial tear before him. In God's domain, the greatest difference separating Tier 3 and Tier 4 players wasn't the difference in physique, but the degree of control they had over mana and their application of it. To be precise, it was the degree of control over and application of ambient mana. Controlling and utilizing ambient mana might be something players had started doing since the start of the game, but the standard at which Tier 0 players did it was only at the most basic level. Their efficiency in utilizing mana was extremely low. Hence, players needed to rely on the mana of their fully unlocked mana bodies to guide and utilize the ambient mana for their own use. To put it simply, players had to rely on their own mana bodies to integrate and convert ambient mana into their own mana. By doing so, one would be able to maximize the power they could exhibit with their mana. However, integrating ambient mana was a challenge. Without guidelines or legacies in the outside world to teach players how to accomplish this, players could only rely on themselves to learn how to do so. However, while carefully observing the second light shadow he executed, Xiaofan noticed something peculiar about the mana around him. The ancient Secret Land's ambient mana had actually taken the initiative to integrate itself with his mana. This development had drastically increased the amount of ambient mana he could manipulate and, in turn, boosted the power of light shadow significantly. However, as he wasn't actively executing this mana integration, his mana usage efficiency was still very low. The additional ambient mana he managed to manipulate had increased only light shadow's destructive power, not the mana technique's strength. This was akin to putting an edge on a weapon. While he might have increased the weapon's destructive power, the weapon itself remained unchanged. Even so, this was an incredibly precious situation. After all, there was almost no information available in the outside world that could help players achieve mana integration. Now that the mana here was actively integrating itself with his mana, he could gain some hints on how to do so and increase his learning efficiency. Following which, Xiaofan stopped dwelling on this matter. Instead, he executed Light Shadow 2 more times to chop off 1 leg each from the one-horned bear and 6-eyed gorilla. The mobility of these 2 region chiefs has already been greatly reduced. Let's go, Xiaofan said as he turned to Crimson Star and Wildfighter, who were still in a daze. After saying so, Xiaofan promptly ran toward the ancient city, ignoring the 2 region chiefs. He got through, just like that? Crimson Star and Wildfighter were at a loss for words when they goggled at the 2 region chiefs, which were warily watching Xiaofan leave without making a move. They were currently inside the extremely dangerous ancient Secret Land, and their opponents were even 2 region chiefs, and yet. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. However, Crimson Star and Wildfighter did not linger over this topic for long. They quickly instructed everyone else on the team to ignore the two region chiefs and follow Feng. Now that the two region chiefs had each lost a leg, their mobility was greatly impeded compared to before. It would be almost impossible for them to catch up with Tier 3 players running at full speed. The team could easily escape the two region chiefs' perception range before they fully recovered. Team leader, are we still chasing them? A Tier 3 ranger from mythology asked Sandstorm when he saw Feng's team leaving. Of course, we are. Sandstorm said as he glared at the Tier 3 ranger. Gritting his teeth, he said, I admit that Black Flame's combat power is at inhuman levels, but he is only one person. Even if we can't kill Black Flame, I refuse to believe that we can't handle the other players on his team. So long as we get rid of everyone else, Black Flame's plans here will be ruined. After saying so, Sandstorm started chasing Feng's team, together with the other 30+ members of mythology. Chapter 2630, Tier 4 Divine Will. While the ancient secret land might be known as a secret land, it was several times larger than a large-scale map in the outside world, essentially a miniature world. Even though Feng and the others were Tier 3 players, since they were prohibited from using mounts, they ended up running for more than half a day to reach a majestic city in the middle of a canyon. The city in question had several layers of magic barriers as defense. Through the translucent barriers, one could see multiple magic towers and buildings several hundred meters tall. There were even floating buildings that could not be found in any of the kingdoms and empires on the main continent. This city was far more developed than even the capitals of kingdoms and empires. Feng was shocked when he laid eyes on this majestic ancient city for the first time. Even while standing several thousand yards away from the city, he could already feel a frightening pressure constantly bearing down on his body, making his body indescribably heavy. If Tier 2 players were subjected to this pressure, they wouldn't be able to approach the city at all. Be careful of those statues erected behind the city walls. Although there are magic arrays suppressing the power of those statues, if you look at them for too long, you'll fall into a mentally weakened state, Crimson Star warned the curious crowd behind her. If that happens, you'll need 4 or 5 days to recover. Let alone challenging the trial, you might not even have enough time to make it out of the secret land. Those statues will cause players to fall into a mentally weakened state. Upon hearing Crimson Star's words, Feng could not help taking a closer look at the stone statues enveloped by magic arrays. As soon as he did so, he felt a frightening spiritual pressure invading his mind. At the same time, the figure of an ancient being appeared briefly before his mind's eye. Feng's heart palpitated from this mental pressure. Fortunately, his mind was able to resist it, if just barely. Tier 4 Divine Will? Feng was somewhat surprised at the mental pressure the statues were exuding. No wonder Violet Sword was able to produce so many Tier 4 experts back then. At this point, ancient gods had long since withdrawn from the main continent of God's domain. Now, it was incredibly difficult to meet even demigods there. However, before disappearing, many ancient gods had left behind legacies in dangerous locations. Meanwhile, these legacy locations generally possessed divine will. On the surface, the divine wills in these legacy locations function to inflict powerful mental pressure on trespassers and deter casual approach or observation of the legacy locations. However, divine will also had a very useful function for players, the tempering of concentration. In God's domain, players' stamina and concentration were considered hidden attributes and were incredibly difficult to raise. This was especially true for the concentration attribute. Aside from tier promotions, there were no clear methods that players could use to raise their concentration. Originally, concentration was an attribute few players paid attention to, as they would generally run out of stamina before they would concentration. However, as more and more players started learning combat techniques, everyone finally understood the importance of concentration. With stronger concentration, not only could players afford to execute many more combat techniques, but they could also reduce the stamina and concentration consumption of combat techniques. Most importantly, powerful combat techniques required sufficiently high concentration. Unfortunately, there weren't many known methods that players could use to reliably increase their concentration. Generally, players could only rely on raising their tiers or improving their brain activity to do so. However, as more and more experts came into contact with ancient locations and divine will, they had discovered an astonishing matter: divine will could actually be used to raise the maximum limit of players' concentration. Although the improvements were small, players would eventually receive an impressive boost to their concentration over time. However, divine will wasn't something that easily found. Moreover, divine will couldn't improve a player's concentration in perpetuity. The improvements players could receive from the divine will would differ depending on its strength. If players already possessed very powerful concentration, certain divine wills might not even be effective on them. Meanwhile, the statues erected within the ancient city contained divine will capable of tempering players' concentration up to the Tier 4 standard, hence, Feng had referred to it as Tier 4 divine will. If a Tier 3 player could elevate their concentration to the Tier 4 standard, it would be of tremendous help when challenging the Tier 4 promotion quest. With stronger concentration, players could better control their body, strength, and mana. They would be able to exhibit much greater potential than they used to. However, due to the magic arrays enveloping those statues, the divine will the statues emitted was heavily suppressed. While this weakened divine will might be effective on ordinary Tier 3 players, it would be almost no help to Tier 3 peak experts. Tier 3 peak experts that tried to temper themselves using this divine will would only exhaust their concentration to no avail. Guild leader Black Flame, ahead of us is the entrance to the trial grounds, Crimson Star said as she pointed at a gigantic gate nearby. As we are challenging the hero trial, we have only one opportunity. If we team wipe inside, we won't be able to enter the trial grounds anymore. However, so long as we have even one person alive, even if everyone else on the team dies, we can still enter the trial grounds after getting automatically resurrected outside. Only, the resurrection period within the ancient secret land is very long, 1 full day, so everyone needs to be careful while inside. It might be fine if they were challenging the normal trial, but they had only one opportunity to challenge the hero trial. If the players on their team kept dying, they definitely wouldn't be able to clear the hero trial before the effects of their alchemy arrays ran out. Hence, when challenging the hero trial, controlling the casualty rate was crucial. This was also the reason why she wanted to avoid the region chiefs. Had their team gotten annihilated by the 2 region chiefs back then, they would have had to wait 1 full day before they could head to the trial grounds. I understand, Feng said, nodding. Since Feng already understood her intentions, Crimson Star did not say anything more. After all, experts of Feng's caliber generally needed only small reminders to know what they should do. Following which, Crimson Star, Wildfighter, and several other Violet Sword members approached the 10-meter-tall teleportation gate. Each of them then took out an ink-black crystal from their bags and started chanting an incantation. As soon as these dozen or so players started chanting, the divine runes engraved on the teleportation gate lit up and drew the ambient mana toward the teleportation gate. While Crimson Star and the others were activating the hero trial, Sandstorm and Mythology's other members were quietly observing the situation from behind a pile of shattered rocks 500 yards away. The hero trial, the female guardian knight standing beside Sandstorm exclaimed in surprise when she identified the divine runes lighting up on the teleportation gate. Violet Sword actually plans to challenge the hero trial now? Are they insane? She had experienced the ancient city's trials herself. While she didn't know what the hero trial was like, she knew that even the elite trial was not something current players could hope to conquer. If not for their previous raid team having plenty of advanced battle arrays, they wouldn't have made it to the trial boss's feet. As for the more difficult hero trial, that was something even the current mythology didn't dare dream of challenging. The hero trial? When Sandstorm saw Crimson Star's group activating the hero trial, a wide smile bloomed on his face. Good. Wonderful. Although I don't know what gave Violet Swords and Zero Wings people the courage to challenge the hero trial, this is our chance. Since Crimson Star and Wildfighter are personally activating the hero trial, they can't stop midway without wasting their one chance. This is the perfect time for us to take action. But dealing with Black Flame won't be easy, the female Guardian Knight argued worriedly as she eyed Feng, who was standing beside the teleportation gate. With him around, it'll be difficult for us to gain any advantage. Relax. The Vice Commander prepared a trump card for our operation this time, Sandstorm said, grinning. He then took out several gleaming gemstones from his bag. These are Tier 3 magic devouring gemstones, which the Vice Commander obtained from the Demon God's Shrine. If we equip them on level 100 dark gold weapons or above, we can sacrifice the weapon and the gemstone to gain Tier 4 power for a short period. This item isn't subject to any restrictions inside the ancient secret land. The Vice Commander gave me 5 of these as a precaution. So long as we 5 team leaders use this gemstone, we'll have 5 Tier 4 combatants on our side. Including the HP and defense we'll gain from the advanced battle array, we should be able to pin down Black Flame with just 3 people. The remaining 2 team leaders will lead the rest to slaughter Violet Swords and Zero Wings members. All their efforts will go down the drain. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ew, if you had such treasures on you, why didn't you take them out earlier? The female Guardian Knight grumbled as she rolled her eyes at Sandstorm. Previously, the task their Vice Commander gave them was for them to spoil Violet Sword's plan, as well as kill Feng if possible. With the magic devouring gemstones, while they might not be capable of killing Feng, spoiling Violet Sword's plan would be child's play. After all, players that died in the ancient secret land needed to wait 1 full day to get resurrected. If they could kill a significant number of Violet Swords and Zero Wings members, the 2 guilds would waste 1 day of the alchemy array's operational time, which would, in turn, drastically reduce the 2 guilds' odds of clearing the hero trial. And if they could interrupt the activation of the teleportation gate, they would thoroughly shatter Violet Sword's plan of raiding the hero trial. Alright, 1 for each of you, Sandstorm said as he distributed the magic-devouring gemstones to the 4 other team leaders on the team. He then looked toward Feng and said, "It's time we let Black Flame know how foolish it is to offend mythology." Chapter 2631, Yan Xiaoqian taking action. As Crimson Star and the others chanted their incantation, a spatial tunnel gradually opened in the teleportation gate. The moment the spatial tunnel appeared, everyone present felt an ancient aura spilling out from it as if a dragon from the abyss had just awakened. An unprecedented pressure bore down on their bodies. So, this is the hero trial? Feng was inwardly astonished when he felt the pressure on his body. The strength of this aura practically rivals that of a demigod. Even Tier 3 experts will most likely have difficulty exhibiting combat power at the Tier 2 standard while inside. While the pressure an aura subjected players to was not fatal, it would affect their combat power. At this moment, the aura leaking out of the spatial passage was so powerful that it made even Feng feel very uncomfortable. If other Tier 3 players were to fight while subjected to this aura, their combat power would definitely suffer. There are still 40 seconds left until the teleportation gate is fully activated. A mana shockwave will occur when that happens. Floating Light, start constructing a barrier. Crimson Star said through the team chat when she saw the spatial passage stabilizing. Understood. Upon hearing Crimson Star's command, Floating Light promptly ordered Violet Sword's Tier 3 magical classes to construct a Tier 3 defensive barrier. While a mana shockwave wouldn't cause direct damage, players that got hit by one would have their control over and perception of mana weakened significantly for a certain period. Players might even lose the ability to use skills and spells during this time. On Violet Sword's first attempt at the normal trial, the raid team dispatched had failed to take this mana shockwave into account. As a result, the raid team had suffered from a runaway mana state for one whole day. However, as Violet Sword's members were constructing the defensive barrier, a low shout came from a distance. A chance. Everyone, attack. Interrupt the teleportation gate's activation. Sandstorm commanded when he saw Floating Light and the magical class players of Violet Sword constructing a magic barrier. Immediately, several figures charged toward Crimson Star's group with flying speeds. The Silver Light Legion? Crimson Star immediately recognized Sandstorm's group when she saw them, her complexion darkening slightly. Sandstorm. Is mythology trying to break the agreement? If their team had come across Sandstorm's group under normal circumstances, she wouldn't have paid mythology's members any attention at all. However, Violet Sword's peak experts were currently occupied with activating the teleportation gate and defending against the resulting mana shockwave. They barely had any manpower available to repulse Sandstorm's group. Meanwhile, Sandstorm's team consisted of Void Realm experts or better. If these people attacked now, the consequences would be unimaginable. Moreover, Sandstorm and the others had their advanced battle arrays activated, which boosted their basic attributes far beyond those of ordinary Tier 3 players. Agreement? Sandstorm laughed at Crimson Star's words. I don't recall mythology making any agreements with Violet Sword regarding what happens inside the ancient secret land. Besides, if you have to blame someone, blame yourselves for not knowing what's good for you. Since you dare to partner with Zero Wing, then die with it. Sandstorm's team accelerated. Damn it! They're actually taking action. Crimson Star turned to Floating Light and said, Light, coordinate with Guild Leader Black Flame's group and buy us time. If the teleportation gate's activation is interrupted, we'll lose our chance to challenge the hero trial. Understood. Floating Light nodded in response. He then faced Sandstorm's team with a solemn expression. Although their side had an absolute advantage in numbers and they even had the help of a monster like Feng, the number of combat-ready peak experts they had was far from comparable. Not to mention, Sandstorm and a few other individuals on his team had an advanced battle array, which granted them a huge increase in basic attributes. If they allowed Sandstorm's team to break through and interrupt Crimson Star's group, then all their preparations for the hero trial would be for naught. You need to be careful. I don't know why, but Sandstorm and his fellow team leaders are actually giving off a pressure like a mythic monsters. Do not clash with them directly, no matter what. Wildfighter reminded, a serious expression similarly appearing on his face. All you need to do is buy time. So long as you can hold them back for 40 seconds or so, we'll be free and can deal with them together. At this time, however, Feng suddenly said, that won't be necessary. Just leave these people to us. Focus on activating the teleportation gate and defending against what comes after. Guild Leader Black Flame, we do not doubt your strength, but we really cannot take this risk. The members of Mythology's Silver Light Legion are all supported by a battle array. Their peak experts can hold their own against Domain Realm experts. Not to mention, Sandstorm and his fellow team leaders are at the half-step Domain Realm, at the very least. The few of them also possess some kind of strange strength. They aren't a force that an ordinary team of peak experts can hope to handle, Crimson Star advised hurriedly when she saw Feng dissuading them from taking part in the battle. Although Floating Light's group only has a few members, every one of them is a peak expert. They can be of some help to you. She was confident that Feng would emerge victorious in a fight with Sandstorm's group. However, their problem right now wasn't whether they could defeat Sandstorm's group but whether they could prevent Sandstorm's group from interrupting the teleportation gate's activation. After all was said and done, Feng was only one person. Since Sandstorm's team had 30 players, how many could Feng possibly hold back by himself? Wildfighter also nodded in agreement with Crimson Star's words. He felt that Feng was being perverse about keeping up appearances. Don't misunderstand. We are fully capable of stopping this level of combat power. If you still feel uneasy, I won't object to you joining the battle, Feng said, chuckling at the anxious expressions on Crimson Star's and Wildfighter's faces. Although Feng did not speak that loudly, everyone present was a Tier 3 expert with extraordinary senses. Hence, even Sandstorm's group, which was still several hundred yards away, heard him clearly. Stop us? Sandstorm laughed at Feng's words, a cold glint appearing in his eyes. Let's see how you'll stop us, then. You guys, take action. As soon as Sandstorm finished speaking, 6 level 113 and higher assassins suddenly appeared within 50 yards of Crimson Star's group. The masked man at the head of the assassins radiated an aura rivaling that of mythic monsters. This lead assassin moved so quickly that he appeared within 30 yards of Crimson Star in just the blink of an eye. The assassin then unsheathed his daggers and sent several dozen arcs of light tearing through space toward Crimson Star and the dozen or so other players activating the teleportation gate. What? Some of them actually snuck over already? Floating Light's complexion paled upon seeing these 6 assassins. It was simply impossible for them to stop such a sudden and widespread attack. Even Feng would most likely be able to stop only a portion of these attacks. After all, Crimson Star and the others activating the teleportation gate stood a distance from each other. It was impossible for a melee player like Feng to cover all that ground simultaneously. Just when the several dozen arcs of light were about to land on Crimson Star and the others, however, ice walls started appearing out of thin air one after another, separating Crimson Star's group from the light arcs. Meanwhile, when these powerful light arcs, which were capable of tearing apart even space itself, landed on the ice walls, it was as if they had crashed into an impenetrable wall. Not only did the ice walls stop the advance of these light arcs, but they even deflected the attacks to a certain extent. In the end, not even one of the several dozen light arcs managed to land on their target. Impossible. My attack actually got deflected by a bunch of Tier 2 ice walls. The eyes of the level 114, Tier 4 assassin in the lead nearly fell out of their sockets when he saw this scene. Currently, thanks to the magic devouring gemstone, his Tier 3 skill already carried power at the Tier 4 standard, something a few measly Tier 2 ice walls couldn't hope to deflect. In fact, the Tier 2 ice walls shouldn't even be capable of affecting his attack at all. However, the impossible had actually happened. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, who took action? Sandstorm was likewise stunned by this scene. He then turned to Crimson Star and wondered, could it be her? At this moment, Sandstorm truly could not think of any elementalist, aside from Crimson Star, who could use Tier 2 ice walls to deflect Tier 4 attacks. On the other hand, Crimson Star was currently activating the teleportation gate. Logically, she shouldn't have any leeway to do anything else. Crimson Star herself was astonished by this situation. However, compared to a melee player like Sandstorm, she, as an elementalist, was much more sensitive to mana. Hence, she was able to trace the origin of the ice walls immediately. Xiaoqian? When Crimson Star turned to look at the origin of the ice walls, however, she was stunned when her gaze landed on Yan Xiaoqian. Currently, ice-type mana swirled around Yan Xiaoqian, a testament to the activation of an ice-type spell. Since when was she this strong? Chapter 2632, Silenced Battlefield. Upon seeing Yan Xiaoqian take action, Violet Sword's members fell silent. Yan Xiaoqian had attracted a lot of attention when she participated in the training for young talents in Violet Sword. One of the reasons for this was that she was only half a step away from entering the domain realm. The other reason was Instructor Tori's willingness to teach her. Hence, most of Violet Sword's upper echelon and peak experts had done their research on her and knew what kind of strength she possessed. However, the current Xiaoqian was like a completely different person from the one they knew. She had single-handedly stopped the attack of a peak expert whose basic attributes were at the Tier 4 standard. Moreover, this Tier 3 assassin expert was also clearly only half a step away from the domain realm. Of the Violet Sword members present, even domain realm experts like Crimson Star and Wildfighter might not be able to stop the assassin's attacks completely, yet Xiaoqian had. Naturally, this surprised Violet Sword's members. Her mana body is fully unlocked. Wildfighter, who stood relatively close to Xiaoqian, revealed astonishment on his face when he sensed intense mana fluctuations from her. Her mana body was only at a little more than 50% potential 3 days ago. What did Zero Wing do? Upon hearing Wildfighter's words, realization dawned upon the other Violet Sword members present, and every one of them stared at Xiaoqian in even greater astonishment. This was especially true for Floating Light, who had trained under Instructor Tori together with her. How is this possible? This is the mana body we are talking about. How can she fully unlock it in just 3 days? Floating Light's eyes widened in shock as he gaped at Xiaoqian. For a moment, he felt as if he was looking at a stranger. When it came to talent in combat, he was superior to Xiaoqian. In addition, after he had trained in the ancient Secret Land's special training ground, his combat power was now recognized as almost equal to Solitary Frost's. In theory, he should be far superior to Xiaoqian. Now, however, it turned out that Xiaoqian's combat power actually surpassed his by a large margin. However, before Violet Sword's members could react to this unexpected development, Mythology's lead assassin made another move. This time, though, he dashed forward at great speed instead of launching a ranged attack. In no time at all, the lead assassin arrived within 10 yards of Crimson Star's group, this situation causing the expressions of Crimson Star and the others to darken. The assassin class wasn't known for its ranged attacks, the class truly shone in close combat. This was especially true for the explosive power the class could exhibit at melee range. Moreover, with the agility of the assassin class, trying to pin one down using ranged spells was extremely difficult, all the more an assassin with Tier 4 basic attributes. That little girl's defensive measures might be brilliant, but at this distance, I want to see how she'll stop my attacks, the lead assassin said as he got within 5 yards of Wildfighter. Tier 3 skill, Absolute Shadow Assault. Immediately, the assassin's body split into multiple shadows to assail Wildfighter, these shadows causing the surrounding space to crack as they approached the berserker. These shadows were so powerful that even Guardian Knights and Shield Warriors would die instantly if struck, let alone a berserker like Wildfighter. It's over. Upon seeing the rapidly approaching shadows, Wildfighter involuntarily shut his eyes. As he was currently activating the teleportation gate, he couldn't afford to defend against the attack at all, doing so would cancel the process. Moreover, even if he weren't occupied with the gate's activation, he still wouldn't be able to get away unscathed from such a powerful attack. After all, not only did these shadows carry power at the Tier 4 standard, but they were also strengthened by a basic combat technique. Just as the several shadows were about to devour Wildfighter, however, a figure suddenly descended from above and transformed into 4 identical copies of themselves, which then struck at the assaulting shadows. Pung! 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 The clangor of weapons repeatedly echoed throughout the area before the teleportation gate. Multiple cracks extending up to 30 yards away appeared on the ground. The frightening shockwaves resulting from the clashes almost toppled the nearby peak experts. When the dust settled, a male youth wielding a great sword appeared, standing quietly before the lead assassin from Mythology. Since the youth's HP bar remained full, it was obvious that he had successfully fended off the lead assassin's attack. Solitary Frost? Wildfighter could not help doubting his eyes when he saw the youth shielding him. Even in his peak state, Wildfighter doubted he could perfectly defend against the lead assassin's attack. However, not only did Solitary Frost remain unscathed after repelling the lead assassin's attack, but the youth had also kept Wildfighter from coming to harm. The combat power Solitary Frost had just displayed was completely different from what Wildfighter remembered. He fully unlocked his mana body as well. When Crimson Star saw that Solitary Frost was similarly exuding a frightening amount of mana from his body, astonishment and confusion appeared in her eyes. In the case of Xiaoqian, Crimson Star still found it understandable for the girl to unlock her mana body to 100% potential in just 3 short days. After all, Xiaoqian was a magical class player. She boasted far better mana control than melee experts like Solitary Frost. She had much better odds of unlocking the mana body. Now, however, Solitary Frost had actually fully unlocked his mana body too. Since when did unlocking the mana body become so easy? While Crimson Star stewed in shock and confusion, Mythology's assassin leader, whose attacks got thwarted twice in a row, was extremely depressed. First, it was Xiaoqian. Now, it was Solitary Frost. He was clearly just one step away from foiling Violet Sword's plans, yet he got blocked time and again. Sandstorm, my side is in trouble. The kid I'm up against has already fully unlocked his mana body. His combat standard is also very high. He's not the slightest bit weaker than Wildfighter. If he focuses on deflecting my attacks, I don't think I can do anything to the casters within a short period. If Black Flame joins in on the fight, I'm afraid I won't even be able to escape, the lead assassin reported to Sandstorm through the team chat. Since the ambush has failed, retreat and regroup with us first. We'll focus on killing off as many of Zero Wings and Azure's members as possible, Sandstorm ordered, gritting his teeth when he saw Feng holding off the remaining 5 members of the assassin party. After saying so, Sandstorm hastened his footsteps. Previously, the main group of Mythology's team had deliberately exposed themselves to hold the attention of Feng and the other Zero Wing members with fully unlocked mana bodies so that the assassin party would succeed in its ambush. However, Azure turned out to have monsters with fully unlocked mana bodies as well. This unexpected development had thrown a wrench into Sandstorm's original plans. Everyone, charge! No need to hold back anymore. We'll get rid of them together with the assassin party. Sandstorm shouted as he pointed at Zero Wings members. Upon seeing Sandstorm's team rushing toward Zero Wings and Azure's members, Crimson Star and Wildfighter could not help growing anxious. Guild leader Black Flame, we must not let that Tier 3 assassin regroup with Sandstorm's group. Team leaders like him can enter a battle array with each other. If we let him regroup with the main team, those team leaders will become even stronger. Crimson Star warned when she saw Mythology's assassin leader retreating at flying speeds. Relax. Even if they regroup, they have no chance of victory, Feng assured her, smiling. Even after seeing Mythology's assassin party retreating, he showed no intention of giving chase. But, Crimson Star fell speechless when she saw Feng's nonchalant attitude toward Mythology. She knew that Zero Wing had sent over 100 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies this time. These experts undoubtedly possessed astonishing combat power. However, the 30-plus members of Mythology's Silver Light Legion were no pushovers either. With the assistance of a battle array, even those that hadn't fully unlocked their mana bodies could still exhibit combat power rivaling that of experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. In addition, every one of Mythology's members present was a bona fide peak expert or better. If the two sides clashed with each other, Zero Wing definitely wouldn't have an easy time. Good. Flowing Shadows party is almost back. Everyone, get ready. It's time we let Zero Wing and Azure know the power of Mythology. Sandstorm said to the 3 other team leaders when he saw the assassin party within 100 yards of the main team. Leave it to us. Once we activate our battle array, even Black Flame shouldn't think of making short work of us, the female guardian knight standing beside Sandstorm said, nodding. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. However, just as Mythology's assassin party was about to rejoin Sandstorm's group, Feng glanced at Aqua Rose, who stood beside him. In response, Aqua Rose nodded and said calmly, "Everyone, no need to continue hiding. Let these people know our true power." As soon as Aqua Rose finished speaking, Zero Wings members promptly removed their black cloaks. A tsunami of mana immediately flooded the area outside the ancient city. A powerful aura also swept across everyone on the battlefield, stopping Mythology's members in their tracks. And upon seeing the statistics of Zero Wings members, Mythology's members could not help being dumbfounded. Currently, every Zero Wing member before them not only possessed a fully unlocked mana body but was also at level 117 or level 118. Zero Wings melee players were especially eye-catching as every one of them actually boasted dark gold set equipment.